Everyone, and welcome to the March 1st meeting of the Ann Arbor City Council. If you're able, please rise and join us for a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. We pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Would our clerk please call the roll of council?
Councilmember Hayner.
Here.
Councilmember Griswold.
Here.
Councilmember Dish.
Here.
Councilmember Song.
Here.
Councilmember Grand.
Here.
Councilmember Dina.
Here.
Mayor Taylor.
Here.
Councilmember Iyer.
Here.
Councilmember Nelson.
Here.
Councilmember Briggs.
Here.
Councilmember Ramlawi.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. May I have a motion, please, to approve the agenda? Moved by Councilmember Nelson, second by Councilmember Dish. Discussion of the agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The agenda is approved. We have communications today from our city administrator, Mr. Crawford. Crawford, you are on mute.
Had to be that guy. Mayor, thank you. I just wanted to take a moment to point out that on the agenda tonight, you have a resolution between the city and Recycle Arbor. It's been a contract that has taken quite some time to complete, but we're very pleased that to bring you this contract tonight after a lot of work by both Recycle Arbor and the city. So I just want to express my thanks for everyone who worked so hard in bringing that to you. That's all.
Thank you. We now have the monthly update from our Independent Community Police Oversight Commission's chair, Dr. Jackson. Dr. Jackson, you have the comment.
Mayor, Dr. Jackson is joining us now.
Thank you.
Good evening. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Lisa Jackson. I'm the chair of Ann Arbor's Independent Community Police Oversight Commission, also known as ICPOC. Our commission was established as an independent body, not only to improve relations between the community and the Ann Arbor Police Department, but also to examine policing policies and facilitate cooperation between the many different stakeholders involved in keeping our community safe. After 2 years, we finally come to an agreement with the police department on an appropriate timeline for the department to deliver information to our commission, such that we can review complaints filed to them in a timely manner. And while it might seem disheartening to many that it's taken so long to reach such an agreement about something so uncontroversial even, I think this does represent a huge step forward. And I'd like to thank Chief Cox, Deputy Chiefs Metzer and Forsberg, Ariane Slay from the City Attorney's Office, and Francis Tedora Hargraves, who took the lead from ICPOC, for the work that they've done to foster collaboration between all of our organizations. Before I get into my main topic for today, I'd like to wrap up Black History Month by recognizing Albert Wheeler. I'm sure you all know him. He was Ann Arbor's first and only Black mayor and the man after whom Wheeler Park was named in 1987. Wheeler was the first Black tenured professor at the University of Michigan. And even before running for mayor, he formed a group called Blacks United for Liberation and Justice out of concern about excessive police patrol of the Black community and what he considered harassment and illegal arrests. After accusing city leaders of allowing racist policing, saying, quote, "The continued failure of local government to deal honestly and promptly with these charges has caused the Black community to lose faith in local government's willingness and ability to deal with its own employees." He won a controversial election as mayor in 1975, and he and his wife started the group that became the local NAACP chapter and were longtime public servants who helped to change Ann Arbor's racial climate. He was also credited with instilling the idea that city government should be involved in human services to help disadvantaged citizens. The main point to which I'd like to speak this evening regards opportunities present within the city's upcoming budget. For those who aren't aware, council votes on May 17th to pass the city's annual budget. As all of you know, this past year has been challenging for both local businesses and the city itself. As a result, the city's asked each of its agencies to give up a percentage of their annual budget to offset its significantly decreased revenue. In response, Police Chief Cox offered the city $1.3 million, and Fire Chief Kennedy offered over $700,000. Unfortunately, not every agency is equally able to shed parts of their budget, and at the same time that 2020 brought financial challenges, it also highlighted social challenges that must be addressed through intentional public investment, such as police reform and environmental equality. For example, the city received a request from the Sustainability Office for an extra $3.6 million for the A20 carbon neutrality plan. To be very clear, environmental sustainability and a reimagining of public safety are not mutually exclusive. Therefore, the Independent Community Police Oversight Commission sees this budget as a unique opportunity for the city to live up to its promise to reimagine public safety by also funding unarmed response programs in Ann Arbor. No matter what you think of the phrase, the city is in a situation where the police have quite literally volunteered to defund themselves. So this demonstrated willingness by the police to work together with the city for the sake of the whole community is a tremendous opportunity for the city to take the police department's good faith and show them that investments in police alternatives will benefit them as well. I'd be remiss not to mention that there have been discussions within the city of allocating $234,000 of surplus funding that the Ann Arbor Housing Commission allocated from the county mental health millage to a not as yet determined pilot program. And I'm appreciative of the city's mindfulness in thinking about alternatives. However, that amount of money would not come anywhere close to providing unarmed crisis service response services to our community for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And one of the reasons why we currently have police responding to mental health calls is that they're the only department open and available 24/7. So such an unarmed crisis response team would need to be available all the time. $234 would probably only be enough to hire maybe 2.5 unarmed response professionals. Even assuming that they're perfectly split into 3 8-hour shifts and never ever took a day off, we would only ever be able to have one person on duty at a time. One person on call for a community of well over 100,000 people. Even if it were supplemented by federal grants, our imagination for what policing could look like needs to be bigger than what's allowed by ephemeral government grants. We need to commit ourselves to the project of better public safety in the same way that we've committed ourselves towards meeting environmental goals. It should also be recognized that this imagination is not just some idea that ICPOC has thought of on its own. All around the country, youth services agencies and transportation authorities and hospitals and other healthcare agencies, housing agencies, and mental health providers all support unarmed response programs. And perhaps most importantly, it's on us as public servants to dare to imagine in this way because it affects everyone in our community. A lot of times when we talk about police reform in this country, we almost always do so in the context of Black and brown people and those who suffer from psychological issues. And a lot of the time it is those populations who do the bulk of the work when it comes to advocating for change. However, this is not just people of color who are affected. It's our veterans and active duty service members who are 1.4 times as likely to be killed by a cop than their civilian counterparts. It's our undocumented neighbors who are afraid to go to the police for help. The unhoused people who are told to stop loitering that really have nowhere to go. And those on the autism spectrum who are terrified when they drive that they're going to get pulled over and an officer might not understand their sensory sensitivity. Women who think their sexual assault allegations won't be taken seriously. Young white men for whom police killings are the 6th leading cause of death, but are least talked about. Trans folks who have to worry about being put in holding based on what it says on their driver's license and not what they know to be true in their heart. No matter who you are and whether or not you have traditionally been included in these conversations, this affects you. We have the opportunity to acknowledge that with this budget. I highly encourage this body to take advantage of this understanding when it comes time to determine how its money gets allocated. Thank you.
Thank you. We now come to public comment reserve time. Public comment reserve time is an opportunity for members of the public to speak to council and the community about matters of municipal interest. To speak at public comment reserve time, one needs to have signed up in advance by contacting our city clerk. To speak at public comment reserve time, please enter the number on your screen. That is 877-853-5247. 877-853-5247. Having done so, please enter the meeting ID 942-1273-2148. 942-1273-2148. Clerk will identify you by the last 3 digits of your telephone number when it is your turn to speak. When it is your turn to speak, please enter *6 to unmute yourself. *6 to unmute yourself. Speakers have 3 minutes in which to speak, so please pay close attention to the time. Our clerk will notify you when 30 seconds are remaining and when your time has expired. When your time has expired, please conclude your remarks and cede the floor. Our first speaker today is Trisha Duckworth.
Good evening, Council, Mayor Taylor, and all the citizens of Ann Arbor and everybody that is listening. My name is Trisha Duckworth from Survivor Speak. We are speaking today in support of the unarmed crisis responders. There is such a huge need for this in our community. As we can see across the country, what has happened when people respond and they don't know what to do. Right here in the city of Ann Arbor, with the death of Aura Rosser, we've seen what happened and the detriment and the life loss and the children that are without their mother and the family that is without their family member, all because we do not have unarmed crisis responders. Jennifer Hall laid out a blueprint with a small budget that we know, as Dr. Jackson said, is not enough to sustain this kind of programming. But we know that this programming is necessary. So we're asking council to do what is necessary to find the funding for this program so that the community can be safer, so that people of color can be safer, so that people that live with mental illness can be safer. We're coming to you on behalf of Black and brown citizens. And we understand that most times it's voices of privilege that are listened to. But we are asking you to listen to the voice of the community that is crying out on behalf of our roster and those who could potentially be put in harm's way if you continue to send armed officers to handle mental health crises. We are asking this council, we are asking Mayor Taylor to do what is right in this area. Again, the children of our roster, do this on behalf of them. The family of our roster, do this on behalf of them. The friends, the community, everyone that watched as we protested on behalf of our roster, do this for them. And Arbor has spoken. You all sit in the seats to be able to do what is necessary to make sure that citizens are protected. So please, we ask that you stand in support for this unarmed crisis responder program.
30 seconds.
And find the funding. Find the funding to make this happen. Thank you. You have the rest of my time.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Lori Saginaw.
Mayor, I do not see Ms. Saginaw on the call.
Ms. Saginaw, if you are listening, please enter *9 to indicate that you're here, *9 to raise your hand. Ms. Gordon?
I do not see the caller on the line.
We do have someone who has raised their hand.
Can you
I have
hear
a-
me?
Yes, is this Lori Saginaw?
No, I'm the one that raised my hand, so I'm just waiting for my turn.
My apologies. It is Lori Saginaw's turn. We'll be calling. We call people in order that they are on the agenda, sir. If Lori Saginaw is not here, we'll see if she
Oh,
gets picked up on the flip side.
Mayor, I may have her now.
Thank you.
Sorry about that. Caller 551, is this Lori Saginaw? Caller with the phone number ending in 551? You can press *6 to unmute your phone.
We call people in order that they
Okay.
on the agenda, sir.
Am I unmuted now?
Yes, you are. Lori Saginaw is not here. We'll see if she gets picked up on the flip side.
Mayor, I may have her now.
Thank you. Ms.
Thank
Saginaw,
you.
if you could turn off that
551 is
television or
Lori
the computer,
Saginaw.
that way we can speak in real time. There's a delay.
What do you want me to turn off?
Caller with the phone number ending in
We could just hear
551.
ourselves through your channel.
Okay,
That'd be-
how's that? Is that
Perfect.
better?
It is. Thank you.
Okay. All right, great. I haven't done this this way before. I appreciate the opportunity to address all of you tonight. And I want to commend the city, my city, for this goal to re-envision public safety and the commitment to do that, because it is happening across the nation. And I love the idea that we can be on the frontier of this. So as has been mentioned already tonight, I want to support all of our efforts to increase our ability to respond to community need with unarmed responders. And I want to appreciate our very own police department for raising the possibility of offering some of its monies to initiate this change. We're all smart folks. We know that so many situations are better handled by unarmed responders who are trained in trauma and de-escalation. I think that if we can take the first steps to do it, it would be a huge positive impact on our community overall. We know that data shows that unarmed responders reduce the number of deaths and the possibility of it. And I feel that if we aim high and really work on this together, as has been requested, that we can accomplish this. I know firsthand from working on the task force several years ago how complex and how multifaceted the challenges are that police officers face. And as much as they would wish to, there is no way that they can function as mental health experts, social workers, or drug counselors. Yet in so many situations, that's exactly what's expected of them. So sending officers armed with guns to resolve issues that do not require guns is something that I urge you to think of every possible way of ending in a timeline, in a sequence that the community can know and understand. I feel we owe this to our officers and to
30
our
seconds.
community. Please consider with all your creative thoughts and collective knowledge how to maximize this amazing opportunity before us. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Devin Mayer.
Caller with the phone number ending in 323. You can press *6 to unmute your phone.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Good evening, council members and Mayor Taylor. My name is Devin Mayer. I'm a student at the University of Michigan, an athlete on campus, and I'm also enrolled in the Michigan School of Social Work program. Before I start, I feel it is important to also acknowledge my privilege and status prior to speaking before such a high status and elite group such as yourselves. I'm a white, middle-class, affluent male who was born into high places of privilege. However, I seek to utilize my privilege to invoke change and speak for those voices who have been rejected or silenced. Furthermore, I'm here to speak on behalf of Survivors Speak, a nonprofit I work for that seeks to amplify the voices of those who have experienced injustice. I want to speak today, similarly as Trishay and others have spoken about the reallocation of funds in the new discretionary budget. I spoke 2 weeks ago about how we, the citizens of Ann Arbor, are watching where our money is going, and that certainly has not changed. We strongly hope that our voices will be considered in such matters of money allocation, especially when it comes from our taxpayer dollars. With so many places for the funds to be reallocated to, it is vital that we think big picture rather than just on one specific issue. We have seen that there's a large push for a green carbon initiative in the city with a $3.6 million budget request. While I do think that this is important, I would also like to point out how vital it is that we put money back into protecting our citizens. Specifically, I'm speaking about putting that money towards an unarmed crisis response team for citizens living with mental health issues, a type of task force that that would have potentially been able to save someone like Aura Rosser. An unarmed crisis task force could end up saving countless lives in the city. In Denver, their funding of such a program has reaped amazing results already. Their support team assistance response, or STAR as they called it, was called to more than 700 911 calls, every single one of which was de-escalated and resulted in no arrest and no required police backup. Not only would it save citizens' lives, but it would also save police responses as well. The same Denver report showed a decrease of 3% preliminarily in their first 6 months to police calls that they had to respond to, allowing them to be more available for faster, more imminent solutions. I've seen in one of the protests earlier this summer in the city of Ann Arbor, there was division. Protests supporting the same Black Lives Matter movement had a wedge driven through them due to the Aura Rosser shootings and other cases in the city that resulted in a lack of trust in the police.
30
Reallocation
seconds.
of this vital money could save lives, resources, and help mend a broken relationship in the city. Putting money towards a crisis response team could help begin to mend the racial divide in the city of Ann Arbor and work towards a unified city. If you truly want to show that you want to start to address some of the racial inequity problems that face our Black and brown brothers and sisters, then we hope that you take this suggestion to heart. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Michelle Hughes.
Mayor, I don't see Michelle Hughes on the call.
We do have someone with their hand raised. Is that a different caller?
It's not the number I have, but I can check.
Please, thank you.
Hi, is this Michelle Hughes?
You are unmuted.
Yes, this is Michelle. Sorry. So surprisingly, I'm not here to talk about DC5, the sidewalk snow removal proposal. It's a strong proposal vetted by the Transportation Commission, and I trust you to do the right thing and pass it. Instead, I'm here to talk about something else. The budget is still being considered, and this is the perfect time to reduce the police's budget and direct that money to a new program of unarmed mental health crisis response. This year, all departments have been asked to reduce their budgets by 5%. At the February 8th Council work session, the police proposed a budget reduction of some $1.3 million. It sounds like a lot, but according to my calculations, that's only a 4.25% reduction from their last year's allocation of $31 million. We should ask them to at least carry their weight, as all departments have been asked to do. But while you've heard me talk before about defunding the police isn't about cutting their budget to make up for a budget shortfall. It's about investing that money in alternative programs that do a better and more equitable job of increasing public safety. Programs like affordable housing and mental health care. An exciting pilot program has in fact been proposed by the Ann Arbor Housing Commission at the council work session of February 22nd, and that is to have unarmed mental health care workers who can respond to appropriate calls instead of the police. However, the Ann Arbor Housing Commission was only able to offer $230,000 from its own budget to fund the effort, not nearly enough. At that meeting, several council members expressed excitement about the idea of finding additional sources of funding for the program. Cut the police budget, at least to the 5% that other departments have been asked, but possibly more. Use that money to fund the effort. Some have noted that there is one department whose budget has been significantly raised this year, and that's the Office of Sustainability, for their work in making Ann Arbor carbon neutral by 2030. Please don't look to cut funding there. In 2018, the City Council declared a climate emergency. We need that funding to address the emergency. But in July, the council declared racism a public health crisis, but made no promises to actually address the crisis. No funding was offered, and no staff was hired. Make those promises. Hire that staff. Create a racial equity office like the county did. The city went to a lot of effort to create the 820 plan. We need an effort like that for public safety. In June, council considered a resolution asking the Police Oversight Commission to do this work. But they haven't had a chance to even respond to that resolution yet because they're overwhelmed with their normal work and are insufficiently funded. Well, I tell you, in 2018, the police task force recommended that they have $300,000 a year. That's what they need to do that work. Do at least that. Do that in this budget. Find that money by reducing the police's budget. Show us that you're serious about doing the work that it would take to foster real public safety for all Ann Arbor's residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Corey Holland.
Mayor, I don't, oh, this might be him. Hi, is this Corey Holland?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
I just want to be brief. I spoke the last council meeting, and I was telling them about the situation I have in our courts and the situation I've been going through. And I've been listening here for the past few minutes. I'm hearing a lot of people quoting numbers, stats, and unarmed resistance, all that type of thing. That sounds really good in theory. It doesn't work. In my situation, I'm literally in the situation I am, and I was sitting at home laying on my couch. So if the system doesn't work, it doesn't matter what you put in the system. The system itself has to work. And in order for that system to work, people of color, like all these other people been talking about, they have to be given some type of rights. Democracy can't work if it only works for a chosen few and other ones are left out. Now, before I get too long on my comments, I want to make sure I say thank you for Mr. Hayner for speaking out last time about my injustice. But instead of repeating what I repeated last time, I just want to point out to you how horrific this story becomes. I haven't seen my children in 5 years for simply one reason. I want justice for the people who harmed me. That's it. You will find no wrongdoing on my part other than that. My whole situation started sleeping on the couch in my house, 2 white women who had my children. Something happened to the children. They took one of the children to the hospital, lied to the hospital, told them I did it, and then they disappeared. And when they got caught by CPS, when CPS caught up with them, they had another lie ready for them. Why are you running from the town you just came from? Or that same black guy that we blamed at the hospital for hurting child, he's also the reason why we're running, because we're afraid of him. So they had this lie constantly going on and on. So if you have a situation where a system where if all you have to do is find a scapegoat who comes from a marginalized community and you get out of all the trouble that you caused, then it doesn't matter what numbers you quote. It doesn't matter what kind of systems you put in place. As long as that racialized threat from a white person of privilege can just destroy a person of color's life that easy, and you ain't done absolutely nothing at all, then it don't matter what program you have. I'm only bringing these problems up right now because I understand that 2 children I have, they're small.
30 seconds.
They're 8 and 11. I haven't seen them since they was 2 and 5. But I know if I don't stand here and fight for this right now, they're going to be facing the same problems that their father is facing, and I have done absolutely nothing at all wrong. You only have to answer 2 questions because you're going to get to know me. I'm not going to be on all these council things, but I'll be down there soon. I'm disabled, so I can't do as much. But you only answer 2 questions when it comes to my case. Do you believe in the rule of law? And do you believe that racism is wrong? Because if you can answer both of those questions and say yes, then my case is simple. But it's not that simple when you got to do it to your own community. So I just ask all the people out here who quoting all these stats and things, please, reality, it's more than just stats. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Dan Billich.
Caller with the phone number ending in 782. Do you have a comment?
Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hello, hello, Mayor and Council, fellow citizens. My name is Dan Billich, and I live at 2719 Cranbrook Road, which is near but not abutting 2857 Packard, the parcel that we're discussing tonight. To begin, I want to thank Council members Radina, Grand, and Griswold for bringing this resolution forward. Last year, we had a proposal for a planned unit development at 2857 Packard Road that I publicly opposed. Fortunately, that development didn't get built. Now we have an alternative, the canopy proposed by Thrive Collaborative, that would preserve and build upon that land in a manner consistent with the ambitious vision Ann Arbor has for itself. The canopy proposal is obviously better than the real estate strip mine currently enshrined in the existing consent judgment. It is also better than anything we have reason to hope for from any for-profit developer. As I understand it, the current resolution before council is simply a matter of asking our legal and planning pros whether it is legally possible for us to do the right thing at 2857 Packard. Of course, we should want to find out whether we have the option to do the right thing. What's at stake is our city's ability to control our own destiny. I am pretty sure our city wants development like that being proposed by Thrive Collaborative. I'm also pretty sure our city doesn't want to be bullied into the type of development enshrined in the current consent judgment. This resolution before you permits council to ask our city employees whether we have the right to be ourselves and determine our own future. Time is of the essence. Please vote yes on the resolution before you. And thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Ann Bannister.
Ms. Bannister? You can unmute yourself and speak. Ms. Bannister, if you press *6, you can unmute yourself.
Good evening, council members. I am here to speak on DC2, the resolution about 2857 Packard, also known as the Weber property and becoming known as the canopy. I would like to thank also Councilmember Radina and Councilmember Grand and Griswold for co-sponsoring this resolution. Tonight we have a tremendous opportunity before council this evening to have a second chance to reopen the consent judgment on this property. And instead of the 51 townhome subdivision plan under the R1E zoning, we can instead have an opportunity to have as many housing units and potentially save the trees and provide an environmentally sustainable housing option and also preserve the historic Collins House on the property. I'm referring to Matt Grovecoft and Thrive Collective's plan called the Canopy that can be a model for future development in the city. It provides more housing without impacting the natural systems and the drainage systems that have been taking such a beating in this area in recent years from other growth pressures. The canopy, as I said, has a similar size of 51 to 70 apartments or condos or a mix of both. It may actually be bigger than, house more people than the townhome subdivision, and it would be 55 feet tall and nestled in amongst the tree canopy and underneath it. It would have similar features to the Viridian plan over at County Farm Park, in that it could be all electric, solar powered, and net zero and eco friendly, and leave over 5 acres of heritage and landmark oak, walnut, and hickory trees. And best of all, if we are able to make a deal with Thrive Collaborative, they will pay fair market value of roughly $1 million and bring that to the table for the to financially help the city preserve this land. So we would get an estimated $1 million by collaborating with Matt Grokoff and Thrive Collaborative.
30 seconds.
So my key points are, please put a date certain on the resolution tonight. I suggest May 15 if possible, because staff has already been studying this for years, and also prepare a letter of intent or purchase agreement for the owner, Bob Weber, and look into the sources of funding, including the $5.5 million in the Parkland Acquisition Fund. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Matt Grokoff.
Caller with the phone number ending in 877. You can press *6 to unmute yourself.
Hey there, can y'all hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
All right, thank you, Mayor Taylor. And so my name is Matthew Grokoff. I'm one of the partners in the Thrive Collaborative during the Canopy Project, and also the Living Community Challenge Project over at Viridian at County Farm in collaboration with Avalon Housing. And I really, again, want to give a really special thanks to Council members Redina and Grand and Griswold for your leadership on this resolution. At Thrive Collaborative, we've got a very different approach to development. We use the frameworks of the Living Building Challenge and the Living Community Challenge, and we believe in basically a threefold approach to development that I would like to see, frankly, become law. We need to make these code. Number one is that we need to stop, and this is not just in Ann Arbor, but globally, we need to stop building on greenfield sites. Full stop. We've developed enough of the planet. There's enough places that we need to build on, that we can build on to increase density and everything else. And number two, we need to build the much needed housing, but only on previously developed lands. And then the third part of that we can begin right away as well is to begin ecological restoration and invite life back to the existing built environment. And that includes even the alleyways of downtown Ann Arbor, finding every niche, every refugia that we can find to bring life back into our human-built environment. But really importantly, to avoid the catastrophic consequences of climate change and to create the sustainable development solutions that we need, rather than focusing on what is politically possible, we need to focus on what is technically necessary. So by focusing what we need to do and but what we must do, then we can turn our attention to ask the very simple question, how do we collaborate to make it possible? So I hope that this collaboration as a community on 2857 Packard, that we can turn what was really a case study of zero-sum development where no one wins. What I love, one of the previous callers called it a development strip mine. And we can turn that into a development that is socially just, culturally rich, and ecologically restorative. And for those of you all out there that want to learn more about the project, you can go to our website at thrive-collaborative.com, and you can email me there too. And we're happy to set up little Zoom calls for everybody to talk and learn more about the project. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Maya Chanel.
Mayor, I don't see this caller on the line.
Ms. Chanel, if you are on the line, please enter *9 now. *9. Perhaps we'll move on. We'll pick her up on the flip side if she's available. Our next speaker is Lisa Brush.
Caller with the phone number ending in 483.
Hello, all. Every time I come before you to talk, I am always struck by the enormity of what you all do every day. So I thank you for that, and I want to thank you for the creativity and thinking about rethinking public safety. And at the moment, I want to put on my snow buddy hat and share with you the transformative nature of the work that I've been doing for the last 7 years with the Snow Buddy Project, and in thinking about sidewalks as pedestrian transportation corridors that should be maintained in their entirety. And it's been a phenomenal journey. So I have heard so we've put out the report, and you all have the hard copy roadmap and the electronic roadmap in your boxes. And we've spent a lot of time thinking about this issue and how we might be able to deliver a citywide solution. And we have been inside the box, we've been outside the box, we've been to Vermont, we've been to other cities throughout the state of Michigan. We've thought about just putting it all on you all and saying, hey, city, this is something that we should do. But instead we've realized that there are so many things that you're dealing with. Rethinking the entire public safety system would be one to spend your time on. And instead, we decided that we would take this group of professionals, I've heard us also called, hey, it's just a group of volunteers, but know that this group of professionals that have been involved with Snow Buddy have decades and decades of experience inside the city and outside the city and helping to deliver solutions to you all to make your job easier. So I just want to say that we're here for you all and want to be able to help push on the system where we can and where we can't. I also want to describe the transformational nature of having city sidewalks maintained in their entirety. So we've been working with the Commission on Disability Issues and the Center for Independent Living, and one of the things that they've said is it's been phenomenal to have the voice of the community with disability issues just represented. Like, they didn't have to fight to have it represented. It was just there because we know that without their city sidewalks maintained in their entirety, they are stuck inside their home. So again, you all started off public comment, and I guess I've got to believe that I'm coming close to the end of the public comment, but it started out about voice, right?
30 seconds.
And representing everybody in this. And so we want to be here to say that when we maintain our city sidewalks in their entirety, and we can do it, we've got some solutions, we're here to help, and we want to provide you with solutions. We've got funding models, governance models, delivery models that really don't put this on your shoulders, and yet we're here to just be there with you along the way and help provide a solution that we think can deliver something transformational to our city. So thank you all.
Thank you. Is Ms. Chanel with us? Ms. Chanel, if you would enter *9, indicate that you wish to speak.
Mayor, I do not see caller 9 on the phone or on the call.
Thank you. We'll move on then to our next speaker, our first alternate. Our next speaker is our first alternate, James Damore.
Mr. Diemar, caller
Mayor,
411.
Council and Jackie, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, very good. Evening, Mayor Taylor and members of council. For the second time this winter, I felt moved to speak before you with respect to a matter near my house. In this case, this is 2857 Packard. I've spoken to you before in the capacity as a representative of the Sierra Club and as an individual opposed to the Peters Building Company project that was rejected by the Planning Commission and Council due to negative impacts, but was forced by the city to be permitted via consent judgment. Well, Jim Heiss was notoriously litigious, and because of that, many landmark and historic trees would be removed under the current site plan under the CJ. And neighbors had valid concerns over water issues and flooding basements were just set aside with this. But for whatever reason, this developer has chosen not to build on this site. But the landowner does have an existing legal site plan that can be transferred to any developer who wishes to build according to this terrible site plan. But for once, it's my pleasure to come before you to actually support potential opportunity for development. Tonight, Council Agenda Item Dc2 gives the city a chance to reopen the CJ, and in doing so, provides an opportunity to save the trees and potentially provide environmentally sustainable housing on this site, while also potentially preserving historic property on the site as well, as previous speakers have indicated. I too want to thank Councilmember Redina for sponsoring this resolution and working with the City Attorney's Office to explore making this opportunity happen, and for Councilmembers Grand and Griswold for co-sponsoring this. I also want to commend Ann Bannister for her work in her previous role as a council member. Matt Grokos Thrive Collaborative has provided a fantastic concept design that frankly I believe can be a model for future development in the city, providing more housing within the city without impacting the natural systems that quite frankly have taken a beating in recent years with growth pressures upon the city. And that's the reason why I appeared before you to oppose these projects, because of the impact on the environment. As I mentioned previously to you, the city's urban forestry project has a goal and budget to increase tree planting as part of AT0's sustainability objectives. Once again, instead of planting young trees, we further the goals of preserving mature trees that help our canopy. Under a plan like Thrive's, these trees can be protected, yet the same amount of housing can be built as would have been under Peters Building ugly snout garage outer-oriented design. My one suggested change, as discussed to the resolution, would be to have the staff come back with a reasonable date certain that the city is earnest about moving forward with positive alternatives for this property. Let's seize the day, folks, and make our community a beautiful and sustainable place. With creative thinking and political and social courage, we can make this happen. I urge you to support DC2 tonight. Once again, thank you, Councilmember Redina and Councilmembers Grant and Griswold for co-sponsoring this resolution. And folks, thank you for considering my remarks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Communications today from council. Councilmember Nelson.
Thank you. I just wanted to announce that there's a project in Churchill Downs that's actually on this agenda tonight, and there's a Zoom meeting on March 4th for residents to get more information about it. This is about the Stormwater Basin Project, and postcards were sent to nearby neighbors, but if anybody's interested in getting that Zoom link, I can send it to you too, if you reach out to me. And I also wanted to comment that today, March 1st, was the effective date for the STR ordinance that council passed in September, and this would have been the effective date. The city has sent out thousands of mailings to property owners to identify themselves and find out how many housing units would be lost to long-term residents if we were to craft exceptions for those that are in violation of the ordinance as passed in September. Planning Commission is going to be talking about it tomorrow night for anyone who is interested in that particular issue. Thank you.
Councilmember Amlawi.
Thank you, Mayor Taylor. I'd like to let the community and body know that I've been working with Tom Crawford and others with the street closures that took place last year. We've met a couple times this year, and I'm hopeful that staff will be bringing forward a resolution at our next meeting outlining the street closures for this summer. It probably have a bit of a smaller footprint. It seems to be the case that the need is not necessarily there, or the representation for that matter at Southview, and the need is not necessarily that great in Carytown. So I imagine this might be a smaller footprint, but hopefully just as successful, if not more, to help promote social distancing and allow our small businesses to thrive once again here, hopefully in the summer. That would go into effect on April 1st. The closures would begin as early as 5 o'clock or so on Thursday and reopen 6 a.m. on Monday, but it's all to the discretion of the associations, the merchants themselves, who have to put the barricades up and take them down. And then I also want to remind residents in the 5th Ward of the groundwater testing program the city employed last year, but I don't think many people took advantage of because it requires a natural flooding event for residents to call in to our water department. Brian Steglitz and folks down at the water department will send representatives from Tetra Tech to come and gather samplings to be tested for dioxin that may be coming in through the groundwater. So this is the time of the year that that would be occurring. So if there is some groundwater coming in those 85 homes that have been identified, please do reach out to get that done, because that is something that only can be done in the springtime, typically. Lastly, I'd like to thank everyone who called in today about reimagining public safety and advocating for shifting funds from any funds that are saved from the police budget to mental health services. Thank you.
Councilmember Griswold.
Last week, the Environmental Commission passed a resolution honoring Dan Bicknell for his work on the remediation of 1,4-dioxane, and many may remember that Dan actually discovered dioxane as a U of M student. The resolution recommended that it be forwarded to City Council as a resolution, and it will be on the agenda for our March 15th meeting. I previously mentioned CARD, the Coalition on Action for Remediation of Dioxane. Their meeting will be tomorrow at 10 a.m. via Zoom. If anyone would like the link, please email me and I will share it. Congresswoman Debbie Dingell will be joining CARD tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. to speak. Thank you.
Councilmember Song.
For folks who love board meetings, the AADL is having the Treason Puppet Board of Trustees meeting next Monday from 7 to 8:30, and public comments are welcome. You have to have a puppet to do it. They do use Robert rules. Councilmember Griswold and I are working on a coffee hour, hopefully by the end of this month, to address some concerns here in Ward 2 on a new development that might be coming along Earhart Road. So we're coordinating that, and we'll announce that hopefully by the end of this week. And then lastly, there's been anti-Asian sentiments and violence around the country, and there was an incident here in Ward 2 over the weekend. So I just want to remind folks that if you feel threatened or in danger, it's a good time to call the police. You can also lodge a complaint with our Human Rights Commission and the Michigan Department of Civil Rights. I'll send those links to everyone on council here, but every council member should be able to direct folks to the resources needed to make sure that folks feel safe in our community, welcomed in our community, and remind folks that hate has no home here. Thank you.
Councilmember Regina.
Thank you, Mayor Taylor. I'll be really brief. I just wanted to remind folks of an upcoming opportunity that Councilmember Grand announced at our last meeting. She and I are partnering together on another coffee hour for Ward 3 residents. And so that is coming up this Sunday, March 7th at 4 p.m. And so you can RSVP on our Facebook event, or if you send either one of us an email, we're happy to include the link back to you that way as well for you to participate. Thanks.
Councilmember Hayner.
Thanks, Mayor Taylor. Just one add on. yeah, the CARB meeting's at 10 a.m. tomorrow. It's the DEQ update, so it's an early meeting. And secondly, I'd just like to share with the folks that we had a meeting up here, and it was a ward meeting, but there were folks from all over the city involved, with our police chief and Sergeant Mills about their community policing efforts, which they now actually they don't call it community policing anymore. They call it community partnership and outreach team that they formed. And some of the topics that our public hearing speakers commented on were discussed at that meeting, and our chief and the command staff seem very amenable to these projects. These are good ideas that are happening elsewhere in the states here, and so I'm looking forward. I was really pleased with what they had to say at this meeting, and how willing they are to reach out to the community and find better ways to do policing, better ways to provide public safety generally. And so I'm excited about the opportunities that we have before us to make these changes. And I obviously I won't speak for the chief or our deputy chief or anybody else over there, but they just seem very amenable to these kinds of programs, and I was excited to hear that. So I think we're going to have some good action on these issues in the future. Thank you.
Councilmember Dish.
Good evening. I just wanted to also speak, as Councilmember Griswold did, to the actions of the Environmental Commission. And I wanted to let everybody know that there's a lot of activity going on the Environmental Commission, a lot of subgroups, a lot of doing real work. And a real focus of this group is to implement our solid waste management plan in ways that are consistent with and forward and accelerate progress towards our 820 goals. And so keep your eyes open, because John Bursky is developing a resolution which will come to council from the Environmental Commission that requests the city to evaluate the feasibility of biweekly trash pickup, which would be coupled with intensifying services to encourage diversion, such as recycling and composting, and would be mindful of impacts on labor. So just to let you know that that's coming. Thanks.
Councilmember Briggs.
Yeah, thank you. Wanted to provide a brief update on a great presentation that we got at Transportation Commission last month from Kayla Coleman, who's community engagement specialist. And she was presenting on equitable community engagement. I'll send that PowerPoint presentation around to all of council, but wanted to draw others' attention to it as well, since we've been speaking about that issue. And they've done some really great work in the systems planning unit, documenting where documenting our community engagement and documenting where we are seeing underrepresentation in folks speaking, and it's pretty well documented that we have we need to boost our participation from non-white, from younger, from less affluent, and from those who are renting in our community. And so great work on the part of our staff, and that paves the way for us to be working more on that. Also just wanted to speak to an issue that we've gotten emailed about in Fifth Ward, First Ward issue regarding drag racing around Skyline High School, and just wanted to provide an update that Ann Arbor Public Schools is on top of this, and has been working with the Ann Arbor Police Department to make sure that that issue is addressed proactively next weekend, that is considered a trespassing issue, and hopefully will be addressed adequately, because it's very disruptive to the neighborhood out that way. And then finally, just to thank everybody who came to my coffee hours yesterday. I hold them on at 4 p.m. the Sundays before our council meetings.
Councilmember Brand.
Thank you. I appreciate Councilmember Medina talking about our coffee hour this Sunday. Looking forward to that. Also, we had a really great PAC meeting for parks last month, and there was all sorts of news about programs that are going to be reopening this summer after a hiatus last summer, which includes not all, but many of our summer camps, which will open for registration on March 15th. 10% of, at least 10% of the spots in summer camps will be reserved for scholarship recipients, so that we understand that sometimes registration can happen very quickly. And so we want to make sure that everyone has the ability to participate in camps. So both camp information, pool information. All 3 of our pools are going to be open, outdoor pools, and for different, programming this summer. So again, it'll still be under the reservation system, but really impressed with the work that park staff is doing to try to keep everyone safe, but also have opportunities to take advantage of our incredible park system, and just really responsive, creative work. So thank you to park staff. Check out that on their website, and scholarship information as well as camp information is available on the website. Thanks so much.
Further communication from council. I'd like to request confirmation of the following appointments that were presented to City Council at the February 16, 2021 regular session. To the Elizabeth Dean Fund, Lynn Nibel. The Housing and Human Services Advisory Board, Jason Talley and Skylar Woodman. To the Recreation Advisory Commission, Lawrence O'Connell. Is there a motion, please? Moved by Councilmember Redina, seconded by Councilmember Iyer. Discussion, please. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's approved. I'd like to recommend the following nominations for your consideration: to the Commission on Disability Issues, Kinsey Button, and to the Huron River Watershed Commission, Janice Bobrin. 2 points on that I'd like to touch upon. The first, I'd like to thank Representative Dingle for organizing an as yet unscheduled, but in the process of doing, meeting among the various Gelman interveners, as well as the Attorney General's office and the EPA. It's very important that we all understand what's going on and that we act in concert with one another. And I thank our dogged congressional representative for her efforts in this regard. Finally, touching a little bit upon the issue that was raised by a number of our speakers, I have for some time now been discussing unarmed response with Chief Cox and Mr. Crawford. And, without regard to funding, which is of course critical and necessary, I want to touch upon some of the obstacles that we have in the development and implementation of an unarmed response system program, a program that I believe to be critical. But in order to make it successful, I think we need to understand and move forward with our eyes open, because successful policy requires vision and flowcharts. As I understand it presently, the primary among the challenges is that the municipal organization has a complete absence of expertise with respect to mental health services. That expertise resides, of course, in community mental health. Also, and of very substantial importance, we also lack control over our 911 dispatch system. That is under the supervision of the sheriff. In other words, unless we're going to reinvent the wheel, if we are going to stand up meaningful on-call unarmed response in the city of Ann Arbor, as I want to do, and I believe members of the community in this body do, we're going to need to cooperate and participate with CMH and the sheriff. And for my part, I'm committed to doing that, to make sure that that cooperation and participation becomes a reality. Towards that end, I've asked staff to put together a resolution of instruction for council's consideration to provide some direction and structure with regard to development of this kind of program, a program of unarmed response. I don't know exactly when that is going to come before us, whether it's next meeting or the next, but it is budget season, and I guess look for it soon. It's an important issue. We have before us the consent agenda. May I have a motion, please, to approve the consent agenda? Moved by Councilmember Dish, seconded by Councilmember Griswold. Discussion of the consent agenda. Member Hayner.
Thanks. Just real quickly, I just want to point out CA7 comes out of Liquor License Review Board, and it's that the conversation we had around that was pretty interesting. The whole meeting was pretty interesting this time, and so there's some other things further on the agenda that you'll see about that. It's kind of nice. We have a gentleman here who's repurposing or is planning to repurpose a downtown space, a sort of beloved space, the old Peaceable Kingdom building, to be a sort of more of a public meeting space around some people's favorite things, vinyl records and a bar. And so it's just a neat idea, and I was glad to see new businesses coming forward to fill up old spaces, and I'd encourage your support. Thank you.
Further discussion of the consent agenda. All in favor of the consent agenda? Opposed? The consent agenda is approved with 11 council members present. All vote in the affirmative, thus satisfying the 8-vote requirement with respect to CA5?
Mayor, and just a note that CA3 was deleted.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Godry. Public hearing, we now come to a public hearing. Public hearings are opportunities for members of the public to speak to council and the community about a specific item on the agenda. That is to say, the specific subject matter of the public hearing. Speakers do not need to have signed up in advance to speak at a public hearing, but your speech must relate to the subject matter of the public hearing. That is to say, the specific item on the agenda. To speak at a public hearing, please enter the number on your screen, 877-853-5247. 877-853-5247. Once you've done that, please enter meeting ID 942-1273-2148. 942-1273-2148. Once you've entered those numbers, please enter *9. *9 to indicate that you wish to speak. Our clerk will identify you by the last 3 digits of your telephone number when it is your turn to speak. Speakers have 3 minutes, so please pay close attention to the time. Our clerk will notify you when 30 seconds are remaining and when your time has expired. When your time has expired, please conclude your remarks and cede the floor. Public hearing number 1, resolution establishing the fee to cover the cost of annual investigation and review of on-premises liquor licenses for 2021. Is there anyone who'd like to speak at this public hearing?
Mayor, I don't see any callers with their hands up for this hearing.
Of the delay, I'll wait a little bit. Seeing no one, this public hearing is closed. A1, we have before us the special session minutes of February 3 and the regular session meeting minutes of February 16, all 2021. May I have a motion, please, to approve these minutes? Moved by Councilmember Griswold, seconded by Councilmember Dish. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Minutes are approved. C1, an ordinance to amend Chapter 55, Unified Development Code, rezoning of 6.58 acres from R4A, Multifamily Dwelling District, to PL, Public Land District, Oakwoods Nature Area Addition, 3382 Green Road. Moved by Councilmember Hayner, seconded by Councilmember Grand. Discussion, please, of C1. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's approved. C2, an ordinance to amend Chapter 55, Unified Development Code, rezoning of 8.48 acres from R1A, Single Family Dwelling District, to PL, Public Land District, Ruthven Nature Area Addition, 3301 Gettys Road. Moved by Councilmember Griswold, seconded by Councilmember Iyer. Discussion, please, of C2. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's approved. C3, an ordinance to amend Chapter 55, zoning of 1.55 acres from TWP Township District to R1A, Single Family Dwelling District, 2511 Newport Road. Moved by Councilmember Dish, seconded by Councilmember Hayner. Discussion, please, of C3. Councilmember Hayner.
I just want to take this opportunity to mention that I've asked our city attorney and some other folks to, city staff, to take a look at the notion of every time the city brings a parcel in, either through an annexation or a change like this, that we review the deed for any kind of unseemly or racist deed restrictions or covenants. I think that it's an opportunity for the city to exercise its responsibility to get those things off the books, to clear the books. And I've talked to some folks at the county about it too. And I think it's something that we're gonna, I want to bring forward this year. I want to bring a process forward that anytime a city property comes from township into the city, that it becomes under our auspices in our borders, that we take this opportunity to look for those. Apparently they're out there on the books. They still exist, and it's a terrible thing. It's a sort of a remnant of our past that needs to be, in my opinion, erased. So I just want to throw that out there. I know this isn't a straight up annexation, but it's similar. And so just these opportunities exist for us to act as a city, and I look forward to bringing that forward soon. Thank you.
Further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? It's approved. C4, an ordinance to amend section 12714 of chapter 12, financing local public improvements of Title I of the Code of the City of Ann Arbor, moved by Council Member Gish, seconded by Council Member Rumlowy. Discussion, please, of C4. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's approved. C5, an ordinance to add chapter 122, fair chance access to housing, to Title IX of the Code of the City of Ann Arbor, moved by Councilmember Radina, seconded by Councilmember Nelson. Discussion, please, of C5. Councilmember Hayner.
Thanks. I'd like to just thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to thank the folks for bringing this forward. I'd actually like to be added as a co-sponsor of this. I think that I think this is yet another way where we can take a look at helping folks in our community and opening up housing, opening up access to housing. It's appropriate that we do this. I know Councilwoman Nelson and I have spoken about some other issues around this matter with the rental lease durations and so on. And so I look forward to that coming forward too. And I just think sometimes these seem like rote little things, but they're going to add up to access for people. This is an important one. So thank you for the folks for bringing this forward.
Councilmember Nelson.
Thank you. This issue was brought to my attention and I had to pass it off to the Human Rights Commission. So there was a whole lot of work that was done. And then about a year ago, my first meeting of the Human Rights Commission, they were discussing this issue and I was so excited to hear just hear how seriously it was being considered and how it was moving forward with discussion around what other communities were doing. This is just a really, really excellent thing. And I'm glad to see that Councilmember Grand raised her hand because she was on HRC and watched it go forward. I caught it in the middle and then Councilmember Dina caught it at the end, but this is going to be an important and meaningful change. Thank you.
Councilmember Radina.
Thank you. Yeah, and I also just want to thank Councilmember Grand and Councilmember Nelson for their work on this prior to my joining HRC. But I also want to thank the Human Rights Commissioners and Attorney Radabaugh for their work on this. I think this is incredibly important for us to do as a community to eliminate this kind of discrimination that exists against formerly incarcerated individuals, which we know particularly with the racial inequities that exist in our criminal justice system. This has a disproportionate impact on Black residents and on other people of color. But we also know that formerly incarcerated individuals are also disproportionately homeless as well. And so this is a really important step towards providing additional housing support and access for individuals who have really been facing a form of discrimination that I think for too long has kind of floated under the radar. So thanks for everybody for their work on this. And I am just glad that I was able to add my name as a co-sponsor. So thanks.
Councilmember Grant.
Thank you. I'd like to have my name added as a co-sponsor. I was thrilled to be part of this conversation on Human Rights Commission. I see that we have not only Attorney Radabaugh here, who was instrumental in getting this forward, but also two Commissioners, Winkler and Cowan from HRC. So if anyone has questions, I'm sure they can answer them. I also want to recognize Aaron Suyama, who was really the force behind bringing this to HRC, and his advocacy as an advocate, as a formerly incarcerated person who was able to really speak from his own lived experience about why this is so critical, and his own struggles, despite being really what we think of as someone who's used their experiences to help others who've come after them. But really struggled to find housing. So I think it's important. I remember being excited in those early conversations and appreciate that I just got to be excited about those conversations and are commissioners and stuff help bring it to us this evening. So thanks.
Councilmember Meyer.
Thank you. I think there's still room. I'd like to be added as a co-sponsor as well. This is one of the objectives that was something that I worked on with ACLU of Michigan back in 2016, eliminating the use of criminal history and selecting tenants. And so it's, it's meaningful to me to be able to vote for this now. And I just appreciate the folks who worked on it and who've brought it forward. It's the right thing to do.
Councilmember Ramlawi.
Thank you, Mayor. And thanks to the folks on the Human Rights Commission for their work on this. I know they were working on this for a long time. They were working on it when I was on the commission, and that was quite some time ago. So hi, Keita, it's been a while. I just have a question, and before I get to that, actually, I just hope that this is just part of a greater movement that we're seeing, and we're seeing, criminal records being expunged, first-time offenders, action being taken at the state level, hopefully at the federal level. That's gonna, make matters even better. It's one issue that both sides of the political spectrum can agree on. And so, but questions came up last night during caucus about prosecution of these, and if someone from attorney's office or staff can kind of just briefly explain to us how members of our community can go about reporting this in just kind of an executive summary way, if possible. I know the ordinance here is with us in the attachments, but while we have the opportunity and time, thanks.
I can take that question. So the initial complaint would go to the Human Rights Commission, and they would do an investigation like they do with anything that arises under the non-discrimination ordinance. So the process would be very similar. They try and work it out amongst the parties to come to a mutually agreeable solution. If they can't, it's referred to the city attorney's office, and then we can prosecute the matter under the ordinance like we would with any other ordinance.
And I imagine you've done your homework, but there's no obviously federal or state laws that would preclude us from enforcing this.
That's correct. The one issue was public housing authorities. So they have federal laws that require them to run criminal background checks in certain circumstances. So we exempted the Ann Arbor Housing Commission and any other public housing authority.
Thanks for that clarification. Appreciate it.
Councilmember Dish.
Yeah, I'd like to add my voice to the chorus of thanks for this work. I know these things they take a lot, much more effort than we think they should because they seem so reasonable. So I'm really grateful for that. And this is it's a great follow-up to the ban the box law that was passed statewide in 2018, which made it illegal to require a job applicant from disclosing that they committed a felony on their job application. So I'm happy to see that we keep this moving. And if there is any room, I'd love to be added as a co-sponsor. And if there isn't, I'm just happy we are so unified behind this.
Councilmember Keener.
Well, thanks for a second opportunity since we're asking some questions. I wonder if Mr. Adwell can answer this follow-up. So when we had to exempt the public housing agency like Housing Commission because they're governed by federal law and they may be required at times to run a background check, I don't want to make the assumption, but I would hope to assume that outside of very specific required circumstances that they make no consideration of the results of that check, right? I mean, our Housing Commission has always, in my mind, been very open in serving the most needed. Is that accurate? Is there, I mean,
yes, and Jennifer, oh, sorry. Yes. So Jennifer Hall, actually, she came to speak to the Human Rights Commission and she worked with us on this ordinance. So she was very supportive of it. And yes, exactly as you described it. The Ann Arbor Housing Commission, they're not trying to exclude people from housing.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you setting that out there, folks. If they read through it, you might wonder why they were exempted, but I can't imagine that they would ever use that as a reason. So thank you.
Further discussion? For my part, I would like also to be added as a co-sponsor, please. This is an outstanding, step forward. Formerly incarcerated persons, suffer discrimination, unjust discrimination on so many levels and in so many areas, and it is proper and important that we provide some protections here in Ann Arbor. And I'm really glad that it's moving forward. So thank you. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It is approved. Thank you, everybody. See you next week. DC1, resolution to waive attorney-client privilege on advice regarding council rules, moved by Councilmember Nelson, seconded by Councilmember Amlawi. Discussion, please, of DC1. Councilmember Nelson.
Thank you. I just want to give a little background on this. On January 19th, I asked our legal department to prepare a memo specifically for the purpose of release to the public on this topic. This request prompted multiple people to accuse me of being pro-censorship. And in the context of that discussion, we were told that a legal memo was already being prepared. And council received a legal memo on this topic on January 30th. February 1st, council passed amended council rules. And after we did that, after an MLive article was published, a lawyer from the ACLU contacted me with concerns that the new rules we had just passed were problematic. Council received an additional legal memo from our attorneys on February 8th. February 16th, we reconsidered the rules and asked that they be delayed for the ACLU to weigh in, but that failed. Tonight, I am asking that privilege be waived on two legal memos that were written on January 30th and February 8th. They were written after the legal department was already alerted to the fact that this topic was of interest and value to the public. This topic is not the subject of litigation. Waiving privilege does not put us in any legal peril. It is also not part of any pattern or trend to recklessly or haphazardly waive privilege on random legal memos. Our legal department offered us very helpful and relevant advice before we amended the council rules, some of which was ignored. I expected that advice to be reaffirmed by the ACLU. I do understand how waiving privilege on these memos could be embarrassing, but I believe they actually highlight the wisdom and judgment of our own legal department. Whether or not we waive privilege on these memos, we will get an opinion from the ACLU. We did not solicit their opinion, but they are meeting to discuss this issue and offer an opinion. They do not need the memos to offer an opinion, but I included the ACLU in this resolution because they were interested in these memos. Thank you. That's it.
The sponsor, Councilmember Amlawi.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Councilmember Nelson, for explaining the timeline and the reasonings associated with this request. I'll probably reiterate a few and repeat it. But obviously, we adopted new rules governing council's actions. We got to the last section, as we all know, and adopted rules that govern the speech of members of council in the public venue outside of our board meetings. So that is the part that raised concern for me as an elected official, as somebody who sworn to defend the Constitution of the United States, of the state of Michigan, and our city charter for that matter. And I feel that this is in direct conflict of upholding my oath to defend those rights. I believe that the rules that were adopted that govern the behavior of elected officials in the public venues has a chilling effect on the dissenting political minority and their rights to freedom of expression. After adopting these rules, after the body adopted these rules, I was approached by the ACLU, who had the same concerns as to the rules as they apply to council members outside of official government business. So we're asking for this to be waived. This issue is not as such as Gelman, where we're in a long litigious court case. It's not an employment matter. It's not a contract. It's not about real estate. It really is about something that, like my colleague just stated, was done well by our legal department. And the ACLU doesn't necessarily need them, but we're asking them because we feel that these documents also pertain to us as individual members, even though our legal body, or our legal staff defends the body, it also helps defend individual council members. So we'd like to have these in the spirit that was just discussed in the last 7 minutes. Thank you.
Councilmember Grant.
Thank you. I'm, unable to support DC1 as it stands, so I'd like to offer an amendment that would actually replace what's in front of us, DC1, with the following language. And it was already sent to all of council earlier today. It was actually, it's not my language, but I appreciate it. So it's a resolution to direct the city attorney to provide public information on public commentary. And it says, whereas the council will be considering possible changing to the rules relating to public commentary, resolved that the city attorney provide a public memo on the general issues, with respect to public commentary and the Open Meetings Act. And that's amazing. It didn't want me to read it. It literally just disappeared off my screen. So I apologize. And there's another resolved that that's been sent around to all of you that hope maybe someone could help me because literally my computer just blinked as I was reading it. Sorry. And Miss Beaudry sent it around. And
if I can, because you sent it around,
Please,
that second
thank
resolve
you.
clause
Yeah.
reads, resolve that the city attorney provide a public memo on the general issue of council speech inside and outside of council meetings with respect to the OMA and the First Amendment. Does that sound right, Councilmember Grant?
That sure does. Thank you. Now I can see it in front of me again.
Is there a second to that amendment? Second by Councilmember Briggs. Councilmember Grant, you still have the floor.
No, I think, I've expressed my concerns in the past about why I don't think it's generally good practice for us to be releasing memos that are intended for council. And I also believe that this process was already, in motion as discussed at this table and also at the Council Administration Committee. So I think this just speaks to the process that was already ongoing and has been already pointed out. If the ACLU wants to take this on, they don't really need our attorney's memos to do so. So that's great.
Member Keener. On the amendment.
Yeah, I'm going to pass. I was willing to speak on the first one. I don't have any comment about this. I thought that the amendments, I thought that the information received from our attorney was well written, informative, is interesting to read. I think I mentioned this last week, and I think it would behoove the community to see the kind of good work that they put together at our request. I thought it was some excellent work that our attorney's office did to put this information together for us, and I'm happy to see him. Happy to let the public have a look at it. I'm trying to compare what the difference is between these two, so I'll let somebody else speak.
Councilmember Ramlawi.
Thank you, Mayor Taylor. I saw this come to us a few hours ago. I appreciate staff's preparing it. My concern is that it does not reference our council rules. It references OMA, it references the First Amendment. This does not reference the recently adopted council rules. And if the body, if there's a friendly amendment to include that, then that's, would address a big concern of mine.
It would include that.
And
as part of council commentary, but yes.
Outside of in public venues.
Yeah.
That portion of those new rules.
Inside and outside, council member.
Yeah. And I imagine most of this work has already been done. I mean, we've received another updated version of advice. Thank you. I'm imagining this work's already done. Might need a little redaction, but not much.
Yeah, the updated public commentary you have, it was actually just to simplify some things for the council, so that's done and can be transformed into this probably without much work. The other document, you're getting a major document on all of the issues relating to council rules, and that, as I've told you before, should be done by this Friday or at latest at next Monday. And that will be, again, 2 major pieces of work. And this resolution, after you finish that, I'm not going to do the public one until you get both of those. And then both of the public ones would come out through this resolution. Yes.
Thank you for being here to answer that. Well, I don't really have much to object because, as was stated, the ACLU doesn't need these memos to do what they're going to do. So either way, it would be nice just to show that the scholarship that our city attorney's office has without, they already gave us good advice. It would be good to share that advice and allow the public to see the advice that we are given when we make decisions. But this will suffice.
And I will say, as the council knows, the administration committee will begin looking at numerous rules, both related to the public and additional council things. And so that's really in their hands and ultimately the council, and this will sort of fit in with the whole framework. So I'm happy to do this.
Councilmember Briggs.
Thanks. I'm glad to see this amendment. I think this is great, a great solution for getting information out that is folks would like to see. I would suggest that, as others have said, it's great work. There's nothing necessarily controversial about it, but it is important that we stick to our good processes as we sing the praises of our city attorney. Our city attorney has also said twice in 2020 that he does not advise that we release confidential legal memos. And so this is the process that we have been recommended to follow, which is creating memos for the public when we want to release information. And so following our city attorney's office advice, I think that is a great path forward.
I might also mention this is what we did with the council ethics. As you recall, back in 2014, we did an extensive public memo on that. We've done public memos on a number of other things, and it has worked. So I think that it will perhaps be satisfactory to everybody. And while the information certainly could generate debate, or otherwise, it could also help you all and the public understand the type of rules and the type of issues that are out there with the laws that are not always easy to follow, but I think it will be useful.
Councilmember Umlawi.
Thanks. Just as a response to an issue that was raised with prior requests that council has asked of waiving privilege, I voted no on those prior requests, at least the one that had 10 years worth of requests under it. I understand the important relationship between the client and the body and the attorney's office. In this case, I would just like to just reiterate the fact that the attorney's office defends and represents each individual member of council as well as the body. And then in this case, that's why I was asking for this memo, was for this to be helping in defending individual members' rights of this body. There is just more than just the relationship between the body and the attorney's office. There's relationships between individual council members and the attorney's office as well.
Further discussion of the amendment? Councilmember Keener.
Sorry. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Either the Councilwoman Nelson and who brought the original one, or Councilwoman Grand who brings this amendment, would anyone like to opine on if they feel that this satisfies the desires to have this information, or such as it is released? I mean, I was perfectly willing to release what we have already received instead of asking for a rewrite from our already burdened legal department. And so I don't want to be a naysayer on these amendments, but I just wondered if the original sponsor would like to comment on that. I mean, I'll support this if it gets the word out to the public, but I just,
I believe it's the preference of our already burdened legal department to follow through with this process.
Councilmember?
Public something.
We've got Councilmember Nelson on the queue.
Actually, to speak somewhat to Councilmember Hayner's point, this doesn't actually address the original intent of the resolution, but I'm very pleased to have the same discussion now without the dark cloud of accusations of like being pro-censorship. So I would like, if I'm not already automatically a sponsor for the amended version, I'd actually like to be a co-sponsor for this one.
Well, I don't want any dark clouds anywhere. And as far as the timing, what I anticipate is that I could attach certainly the public commentary on the memo on public commentary would be attached to the next council meeting, and most likely also the memo on the council at that time also. I don't anticipate an issue with getting both of them on. They'll certainly have the one on, and if it's later after that meeting, I will publicize it in some other way. So if you give me flexibility on that I believe that will be the schedule.
Do I infer then that the amendment is friendly now to the body? Excellent. Thank you. The amendment is adopted. Further discussion. The main motion is amended. Councilmember Romlawi.
Thanks. While I have the opportunity, I'll use it. Appreciate this amendment. Appreciate the work that the city attorney's office is putting into this. I will continue to have issues with our ability to speak freely outside and in public venues. Again, I believe these new rules, parts of them have issues with viewpoint discrimination. And I believe it has a chilling effect on the political minority and the dissenting opinion. And the next steps would be then to challenge these new rules once that opportunity presents itself. But I think we're on course for that.
Further discussion on the main motion? For my part, I look forward to the receipt of the attorney's office public memos. It's the sort of thing that we have been long contemplating, and I'm glad that it's going to be moving forward. I've not been no one from the ACLU has communicated with me with respect to the rules. If it comes to pass that we as a body want to change the rules in response to external feedback or internal feedback, well, that's something that we are well within our rights and to do. And we're putting together something that's iterative here, and so we'll see what develops. I don't think anyone's going to go to the wall on this one. Further discussion of the main motion is amended. All in favor? Opposed? It is approved. DC2 resolution requesting an evaluation of the feasibility of a revised development for 2857 Packard Road, moved by Councilmember Radina, seconded by Councilmember Grand. Discussion, please, of DC2. Councilmember Radina.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I just wanted to briefly, thank staff, Derek Delacourt, Kevin McDonald, and Stephen Postma for their work on this. ultimately, I think most of you know the history of 2857 Packard. We're currently under a consent judgment that would be governing the site plan that could be developed there. In order for any alternative development to be considered, it would require one for the consent judgment to be reopened, but also it would require our staff to go through the normal process of working with property owner and developer to ultimately consider and bring proposals to council for us to consider for the future of this property. And so ultimately, this resolution is meant to broadly empower staff to have those conversations. As I understand it, the previous developer is no longer in the process of plans to develop this site, and so the property owner is interested in working with others to potentially develop it. And so this resolution would move us towards the ability to have those conversations. And so thanks for all of the public commenters who called in and spoke tonight. I do want to clarify that there is currently not a proposal before the council or the city specifically for us to approve. This would just begin that process. And so I do want to be clear about that while there is, I think, absolutely a proposal that is being talked about in the community, that proposal has not formally been brought to the city at this time. Thanks.
Councilmember Hayner.
Well, thanks, Mr. Mayor. My only consideration around this resolution is that I wonder if we should consider adding and I guess I would leave it to the sponsors to pick, but if we should add a date certain, if Mr. Crawford or legal staff would like to opine on what a date might be, how much time they might need to put some of this together. I think it would be nice to put a date in here. I think it's important for real estate transactions to have dates on them. And I fully support the notion of this. I think any opportunity we have to look at a new type of development that preserves open space and meets many other of our community goals is an important time. I had the pleasure of touring this site. They had a VR setup going, and you get up there on the site and you walk around, you could see the building and the open space and the relationship and the opportunity for parks, pathing and so on. And it's an interesting idea. And so would we be interested in putting a date for that to come back? I don't want to push anybody on this, but I think with real estate, it's important to let folks know that we're seriously considering this.
Mr. Crawford, perhaps you can provide
Mayor,
some comfort as to your.
Yeah, Mayor, I was going to say, Mr. Delacourt is actually the one that's the operating lead on this, and I would ask that he comment on that, and perhaps Mr. Postma.
I'd be glad to comment. I mean, obviously, we as staff, we don't have any problem with a deadline per se. We can give council an update as soon as they feel it's relevant. What I can assure is that there's anything at that point that staff is going to be comfortable recommending as a framework to move forward. So we will certainly, I believe, the property owner and the group that at least is interested in right now is of course, in I won't say a rush, but certainly time is always an issue. But I don't think they'll have any issue bringing something forward. We can come back whenever council wants, but there's no assurance we'll be at a point where it's something that staff is comfortable recommending at that point. But certainly an update at any point it's fine with us. We can give you an update on our progress and where we stand, and if there's any major sticking points at that point that council may want to opine on.
Okay, well, I'm happy to let it be then. I mean, and I'll just say that I support this notion that we're asking for some advice to potentially move forward. I was happily supported Councilwoman Bannister in her efforts to try and save some of this parcel. And, I would also encourage our planning commission to reconsider or evaluate the types of planning that took a site like this and didn't allow for a sort of interesting opportunity, interesting configuration of the housing on that site, like is potentially before us now with this Thrive concept. I think we had some R1E on there, which is just not really carrying its weight in the city as far as I'm concerned. So I think there's a lot of things we can look at around this, but to get to the point where we might have an opportunity to do sort of a project that we can address to other people is important in other communities.
Thank you. Councilmember Grant.
Thank you. I was not supportive of efforts to spend, almost all of the Park Advisory Commission's acquisition funds on one piece of property in a prior iteration of this, but this is a different kind of opportunity. I just want to thank all of the neighbors and residents who have reached out to us, who've asked great questions, who've shown a willingness to think differently, and to potentially embrace some different kinds of housing, which I think is terrific. To think about housing along a transit corridor and to include this piece of property in that conversation, I think is really exciting. This is maybe one of the most complex sites I've ever encountered on council. So it's really imperative that we get some more information here. So I want to thank Councilmember Griswold for co-sponsoring, but really thank Councilmember Medina and staff for working together to bring this forward so that we can get a complete understanding of the pros, cons, trade-offs, the information that we need to really look at what is both exciting and complex. And I think anytime something is exciting and complex, there's a lot of misinformation that can be lost in those discussions. So I think it will also help us clarify what this is, what it can be, what it's not, what it can't be, and to eventually make an informed decision that's fair to everyone. So thank you so much to staff. Thank you, Councilmember Medina.
Member Amlawi.
Thank you. I move to strike the third whereas clause in this resolution. I asked an agenda question on what other developers are engaged with Mr. Weber, and I was told that Thrive is the only one at this time or something to that effect. I think this is kind of gives biasness to one unsolicited developer. I think we should be looking at this and offering this to anybody who can manage to achieve the goals that are set out by this resolution. I just think this kind of gives one developer an inside track, perhaps by that type of reference. So I move to strike it.
Is there a second?
I'd like to actually just offer like a slightly different alternative and see if that's friendly, if that's okay.
There is no second presently.
Yeah.
I guess we've now got a second by Councilmember Medina. On the queue, we've got Griswold and Grand. Councilmember Griswold, do you mind if Councilmember Grand goes if she thinks she can move this along quickly? Thank you. Councilmember Grand.
I think if we just strike, including Thrive Collaborative. So if we just say, whereas Mr. Weber is now working with alternative developers and is pursuing an alternative development of the site, I think that I think the including was meant to be inclusive, but maybe that's, I totally understand that perspective.
Is that friendly to the body? All right, so I'm going to take that as an amendment to the amendment, and then I'm going to take that amended amendment friendly. Is everyone happy with that? Excellent. Ms. Beaudry, do you have that? Thank you. Councilmember Griswold.
I just once again want to thank former council member Ann Bannister. I also want to thank all of the community members who have worked on this and focused on trying to save the trees. And also at caucus last night, we had 3 people call in who had not ever called into caucus before, which made me a bit nervous about who they might be. And it turned out that they were neighbors of this site. So welcome to some of the people who are new to community engagement as well. Thanks.
For Councilmember Romali.
Is this on the main motion at this point?
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you. Back to having a date, requesting a date. I think it's based on my experience with this, that this property owner is quite frustrated. He's spent many years trying to do many different things and hasn't been able to be successful at any of them till, unfortunately for his interests. Perhaps fortunately for many people who like to preserve our natural features though. I think it's important that we indicate in some shape or form the date certain that this recommendation comes back, because I don't think the seller is going to be that patient with us. I think we need to move on this if we're going to really have a good chance of succeeding. I think 30 days, 60 days, I'm not sure what staff is comfortable with, but based on
Mr. Crawford.
Yeah.
Mayor, I would suggest not to exceed 90 days. That would allow staff about 60 days to work on it, and then time to get it on your agenda, maybe 60 to 70 days, if that would be my suggestion.
It's 60 days. It would give us May 1st.
I was suggesting 90. That gives them enough time to have negotiations and then get it on your agenda.
Negotiations with who?
Well, to work through the discussions with the property owner and whomever he chooses.
I mean, if that's what you feel comfortable with, I don't want to put you in an uncomfortable or position to fail in.
Beth Brown in the body. Yes, that's is that a no from Councilmember Udina? Councilmember Udina, you're on mute.
Sorry. I actually have a question maybe for Mr. Delacourt on it. And so I don't know what the process here is without it. I would speak to the amendment. I don't know if there's been a second.
I was going to get to that. All right, perhaps rather than have this be something formal, is the body all right with, Mr. Crawford's here, Mr. Delacourt's here. They've told us they're going to get back to us in 90 days. Is that good enough?
It's the sponsors, the resolution.
So I get maybe if you'll allow me the courtesy, I guess I can maybe ask my question, which is essentially, I just want to make sure that we recognize we don't own the property. And so there are a number of pieces of this that would be dependent on outside actors kind of taking action in order for us to fit within that window. And so I also just want to make sure that staff is comfortable that we are not, putting ourselves in an inflexible position that might actually provide leverage to outside individuals.
Councilmember Briggs, thank you for your acquiescence, your presumed flexibility on this. Mr. Delacourt, do you want to hop in?
Yeah, I was going to say, just from a staff point of view, I am quite sure if there's anything here that is of substance with this current potential purchaser of the property in Mr. Weber, I would expect that we would be able to put together some kind of reasonable update within a 90-day time frame and get that back to council. That will not be the last action on this site. I mean, at that point, I would expect that staff would come back and say, we believe there is substance here. There is the outline or the framework of a revised consent judgment that we feel like council may be able to consider. These are the primary points of that. These are the issues we need input from council, and then ask you again, based on this outline, do you see value in going forward and continuing that conversation? And if so, at that time, it may be a more formal request to actually engage with the city attorney's office in bringing back a revised consent judgment. So I think 90 days is fine to put that framework together from us, if there's value in it. And I hear Councilman Ramwali's concern too. I've spoken to Mr. Weber. He would like to know if there's seriousness in this attempt with the developer. So I believe everybody's motivated to get back to council with some type of framework within that time frame. And if we don't have anything, we can certainly come back and say, this has been a bust. There's nothing here, and Mr. Weber can go on and pursue this development with whatever development group he wishes, and we may be back here having this conversation at some point in the future with a different development group. The difference here is because of the consent agreement on the site, staff is not comfortable moving through the normal development discussions without including council and letting you know that we're pursuing this. So that's the real difference here for us.
I'm hearing that staff is getting back to us within 90 days.
Very long way of putting it there. Thank you.
Councilmember Briggs.
Yes, just real briefly, excited to see us considering different consent judgment this evening. Since I was serving on Planning Commission at the time that this originally went through, I just wanted to also note how hard staff and Planning Commission worked to protect the landmark trees that are on that site, and that a great deal of effort went into that. And Commissioner Shannon Grabendel, who is a landscape architect, worked particularly hard on making sure there was appropriate language. So staff has done a great deal of work on this. I'm glad to see that there's an opportunity potentially to work for a much improved consent judgment potentially.
Further discussion of the main motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It is approved. DC3 resolution establishing the fee to cover the cost of annual investigation and review of on-premises liquor licenses, moved by Councilmember Hayner, second by Councilmember Dish. Discussion, please, of DC4. Councilmember Hayner.
Well, thanks, Mr. Mayor. This comes out of Liquor License Review Board. We do an annual request for renewal of the liquor licenses here in town, and it's mandated by the state that we do this review. The state automatically renews licenses if there is no a negative report from the city or license holder in this case. That's what'll happen here. But what happened is we set aside the sending out the letter because the uncertainties around COVID and the ability of places to open and so on. And so we kind of had a wide-ranging discussion at our first Liquor License Review Board meeting of the year. And we thought it might be nice to cut the fee a little bit for these folks. And I know it's sort of a token gesture in this case, because we can't cut it so much that it doesn't reflect the cost of service to the city for providing this. The old fee was determined to be $90, and this is asking that we cut it down to $50. The reason it comes before this body is because of the way the ordinance is written, we have no choice but to ask the body to set the fee. The body does establish the fee for these licenses, that body being City Council. And so for this opportunity for this year of sending out these renewals, I'm asking council to join us in reducing the fee somewhat as sort of a gesture to these business owners that have been struggling in this time. So we can't waive it fully. I mean, I suppose we could, but we determined that wasn't really the best course either. I recognize that the difference is small to a large business, but and yet we feel it's appropriate, or at least I can speak for myself and say I did. So that's where this is coming from. Thank you.
Councilmember Dish.
Yep, just to add, because my colleague in Ward 1 and on the Liquor Board Review Board covered this pretty well, but just to mention that the current fee is $90, and that does reflect what it costs the city to conduct this review. We are proposing to roll this back to the previous fee amount, which was $50, which no longer covers everything that the city needs to do. But in view of the fact that many people didn't even get to use, many establishments didn't even get to use their liquor licenses because they were closed entirely. And then many of them have actually not reopened, even though they could over the past year. We felt that it just would be a nice thing to do. And we were informed that by Ms. Boudry that the budget can absorb the loss that this will mean.
Councilmember Ramlawi.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate the sentiment that's gone into this proposed fee reduction here. I was on the Liquor License Review Committee for a couple of years and rolled off of it this year. In the discussions that we had prior, though, we felt that $90 was actually too low. we had discussions that that fee had not been raised in many, many years, and that we should be looking at perhaps raising this fee from 90 to something closer to perhaps $125. So it was surprising that I saw this, that we were going to be going in the other direction. It's not a battle for me to fight on, or a hill for me to die on. I just think that hopefully we don't think that this is going to solve a lot of problems for these small businesses. They got some huge problems they're going to be facing. And I hope that this $40 reduction in per renewal doesn't cause some difficulties in our own operations, and somehow we subsidize the cost of administering these fees. So if I can have some reassurances, and I apologize I didn't get this question in sooner, as to whether we're going to be subsidizing this program as a result of approving this resolution.
Mr. Crawford.
At this dollar amount, you know, basically these are all fixed costs for the city, so it's just not provided as much of an offset for us. I mean,
how did we get to the $90 figure? I saw Jackie raise her hand.
Yeah, Jackie is the person. If that
Ms.
can,
Baudry?
If it wasn't clear, I think Councilmember Hayner said this, but the resolution is clear that this is just a one-year reduction, and that the anticipation is that next year it would return to the $90 fee, that we're not permanently reducing the fee.
And by just charging $50, are we absorbing any costs? Are we charging less than what it cost us to administer this?
The $90 fee was based on a cost analysis of the clerk's office work. We would still charge if any of the departments did inspections or other work, like building or fire department, but the $90 covers the administrative costs of the clerk's office administering the annual program.
Well, I just feel like we should be consistent and principled, and I just don't see, I can't support a reduction in this. If it costs $90 to administer it, then that's what we should be charging. We're not reducing costs for other issues that people are having. And so I'm sorry, I can't support this.
Councilmember Hayner.
I love how the, Mr. Mayor, I love how it says Councilmember Hey Now in our transcription. It's working pretty well though. Yeah, I'm not gonna, go crazy arguing about this. The $90, if I recall from the notes, came from this notion where sometimes folks don't pay, or we have things we have to go back and forth and chase the letters, and so it was sort of an average across the 243 licenses that we hold was where that 90 came up to. And so I don't think we're taking a big hit on doing this. And believe me, if I thought it was in our budget, I would do all sorts of things to alleviate the woes of these downtown businesses. And we could start with waiving some of these parking fees for some of these prime spots in the parking structures. So I talked to a lot of well, not a lot, but more than a handful of bar owners around this matter. And, some said they appreciated this gesture, and some said they'd like it to be free, but, all of them said they could afford it either way. So again, this is just a notion that, we're just trying to do something nice for these folks. That's all. And, I'd do it for everybody if we could. And perhaps we could. I think this represented around $9,000 worth of potential difference in these fees. So just to put a number on it, again, I think it's about 243 licenses in the city. So it's up to you folks. I'm going to support it.
Further discussion? Roll call vote, please, starting with Councilmember Hayner.
Councilmember Hayner?
Yes.
Councilmember Ditch?
Yes.
Councilmember Griswold?
Yes.
Councilmember Song?
Yes.
Councilmember Grand?
Yes.
Councilmember Medina?
Yes.
Mayor Taylor?
Yes.
Councilmember Iyer?
Yes.
Councilmember Nelson?
Yes.
Councilmember Briggs?
Yes.
Councilmember Maui?
No.
Motion carries.
Short break. It's 9:05. See you again at 9:15. We are back after a short break. DC4, resolution to award a 5-year service contract to Recycle Ann Arbor for the residential customer recyclables collection, estimated in the amount of $7,039,862.40, with city option for 1 2-year extension, estimated in the amount of an additional $3,043,149.60. Moved by Council Member Dish, seconded by Council Member Briggs. Discussion, please, of DC4. Councilmember Romali.
Thank you, Mayor Taylor. This was added late to our agenda. We weren't, I don't believe, able to ask questions by our deadline. Not that I have strong objection to this, but don't necessarily have a whole lot of supplemental information to go along with it. I know it was a 4-month time frame that staff took with Recycle Ann Arbor to come to an agreement. Perhaps if it's okay with members of the body and staff, they can perhaps give us a highlight version of this agreement. What were the issues that took so long to resolve, and perhaps what are the issues that are outstanding? If we can get kind of an executive synopsis.
Here we have Molly Matieski here to respond.
I do, and actually we were hoping to have Eileen Naples on. Jackie, I'm not sure if we can get her on.
I just moved her over.
Okay. Since she was our lead in working with Recycle Ann Arbor along with Tim Wilhelm, I'll let her speak to this. And I believe she's on now.
Hi, Molly and everyone. Good evening. This is Eileen, and I was just re-added. So Molly, I missed everything you said leading up to. I believe she's on now.
Actually, Councilmember Romali would like to just hear about what took so long, and I don't want to speak for you, Councilmember, so I'll let you repeat.
Thanks, Molly. Yeah, it's all right. Appreciate you being here, Eileen, to answer these kind of high-level questions in terms of what were the sticking points that took 4 months to resolve? What were the issues? And what are the outstanding issues? What are the things that perhaps we should be looking at the next time this is up for renewal? Or, but we didn't get this until late Friday, and we didn't have time to submit questions, unfortunately, for written responses.
Absolutely, and I know we're all happy to answer any questions that you have tonight and as we move forward. Just to summarize, it did take some time. This RAA submitted the lowest bid that met all of the city's ITB requirements back in July of 2020. Following their bid submission, they did propose a number of potential edits and also questions about largely operational questions about the ITB document as it was written, that the city took some time to work through just because it was a slight deviation from our process. So we wanted to ensure that everything was in the interest of the city. And Councilmember Romlawi, you asked about some of the specific items. I would characterize them as primarily in 2 camps. One was operational and one was legal, which I'd invite Tim Wilhelm to speak to. The legal issues fell into certain default cure and remedy clauses, as well as the other major issue was force majeure clauses. We took some time to discuss that, and I think ultimately added language that we felt was in the best interest of the city and RAA, so both parties to the contract. Some of the other issues that came up were clarifications and clarifying language regarding instructions, right to do work, the city's right to do work, and any changes to routes, and clarification about what constitutes a single family home that would be serviced under this contract. So we spent a number of months working through these issues in detail with RAA. And as far as I'm concerned, there are no outstanding issues to discuss.
The upcoming issues that you will be facing is during the term of the negotiation, the cost of vehicles, trucks that our AA will have to purchase escalated substantially, and they'll be immediately following a change order to adjust their costs for trucks.
So that will come at the next meeting is our intent.
Thank you. Councilmember Briggs.
I don't have any questions. I just wanted to, as one of the council people that was peppering you with questions along the way about recycling and in general and this contract as well, I just wanted to say thanks to staff. I know there was a lot of work that went into this, and exciting to be voting on it tonight.
Councilmember Hayner.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I guess I do have some questions. So because the contract was for the first term of the contract, the first segment of the contract, it was about 2.5 million below the next bidder, and over the total life of the contract, it was about 3.5 million below the next closest bidder. I guess three things. So are there any hidden costs that aren't shown in that price somehow? Like, my question is perpetually been, who owns and services the vehicles? That's the first one. The second one is, I know that because this is recycling, there is a purchase and a share. Is there some kind of share back mechanism for that insulates or benefits the city as the cost of those recyclables goes up and down, the raw materials that we're selling? And the third is, what is the change order amount going to be coming back to us? Is it going to still turn out that their bid is the lowest of the four, or the three plus our own consideration? Thank you.
So I will address your first question, which is about the trucks. Recycle and Arbor will be furnishing trucks and paying for trucks, including maintenance, fuel, everything like that.
And I'll jump in on the second item. The second item about back end return, that's a MRF question, not a collection. This is just the collection contract. The MRF contract covers sale of recoverables, etc. That's not in this contract.
This is Eileen. I apologize. I no longer have a functioning camera. But I'll jump in on the third question. What is the change order under the change under the contract that we can expect for the increase in the price? And is it still lower than the next lowest bidder? We'll be coming to you, I believe, for the March 15th agenda. That's what we're aiming for, to bring the price amendment to you. So I'll speak to specifics as we get all the documents ready for that meeting. But my understanding is that the change in price is still lower than the next lowest bidder.
Thank you, all three, for answering these questions. Appreciate it.
Further discussion of the main motion. Councilmember Omlawi.
Yeah, I'm just, and thanks, Councilmember Hayner, for asking those questions, especially about the trucks. And we're just told that our AA will be responsible for that, but we are going to be asked, perhaps at our next council meeting, to help pay for it. So could someone perhaps better explain that as to who owns the trucks and who's helping financing them?
Right. The difference is just that from the time that they got put in their original bid in July of 2020 until the time that we finished our contract negotiations, their price to secure trucks went up, which impacts their cost for collection. And so they need to make a change order to their contract because they couldn't adjust their bid prices. Those bid prices were set in July. Does that make sense?
Could we perhaps postpone this contract so we get those figures included in this, and we're not amending this contract just only 2 weeks after it was approved?
It is critical to have the contract at this time so they can order the trucks so that they can have them in time to start the service. The issue was that the negotiations took the 4 to 5 months and not the normal 90 days that you would expect on a bid. And so their bid hold time was exceeded and the market cost of the trucks went up. So we asked for their documentation of the increase in truck values, and they supplied us the cost of what the trucks were originally at the time of the bid and what they are now. So we are very comfortable with bringing an amendment to you.
will that be spread out over the 7 years or 5 years? The additional,
Yeah, the cost adjustment is a unit cost adjustment, so they would be recovering the cost of the trucks over the life of the contract.
thank you.
Councilmember Griswold.
I'd like to be listed as a co-sponsor, and I'd just like to acknowledge all of the good work that's done by Recycle Ann Arbor and how important it is that we recycle and divert waste from our landfill. Thank you.
Further discussion? For my part, I too am delighted that this is going to move forward. I do want to thank staff for all the good work that they have done getting us to this point. I'd like to, of course, too, thank Recycle Ann Arbor for all the good work that they do and their commitment to the mission here. You know, we in Ann Arbor are so fortunate to have community members, community-grown organizations like Recycle Ann Arbor that are focused on being a mission-driven organization like ourselves, but them with particular, but Recycle Ann Arbor with particularity to the importance of municipal recycling. We are, you know, proud to be working with them on this important venture. Further discussion? Councilmember Mayer.
I think I just will ask for after the fact, if with permission for staff or Mr. Crawford, if, because I didn't ask written questions, is it okay if I do who would I address an RFI to if I did have questions around this matter moving forward? I mean, I support this notion that we need to get this contract in place. Who would I address those to?
So that's Mr. Hubie.
Oh, okay. You know, and we read through the contract, different things jump out, and I'm just curious about things like cost per ton and all how we kind of came to these prices. So all right, I'll send that off. I appreciate it. Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It is approved. DC5, resolution to improve winter sidewalk maintenance, moved by Council Member Briggs, seconded by Council Member Griswold. Discussion, please, of DC5. Councilmember Briggs.
Thank you very much. I'm excited to be introducing this resolution tonight. As you recall, we talked about this at our March 1st City Council meeting with a resolution that was presented by Councilmember Griswold and Iyer, and their resolution was postponed to incorporate more council feedback and get the feedback of Transportation Commission, and they tasked me with bringing a resolution back to council by tonight. So since then, we've received more input from council, thanks to the resolution presented by Councilmember Rumlawi at our last meeting, from community partners like Snow Buddy, whom we heard from tonight, city staff and Transportation Commission, and this resolution reflects their feedback. So I'd like to just focus mostly on the feedback that we received from Transportation Commission. The Transportation Commission pushed back against the need for greater observation and pointed to the impressive work of the Pedestrian Safety and Access Task Force in 2015, and that included both robust community input, analysis, and a number of recommendations pertaining to pedestrian access in the winter. So I've tried to include some of those in the whereas clauses of this resolution to document the history of that work. The Transportation Commission believes the city needs to undergo a paradigm shift in which we reconsider whose responsibility it is to clear sidewalks and urges us to move as swiftly as we can towards municipal snow removal. They understand that there are budget constraints, but stress that the status quo isn't acceptable, particularly on our major corridors where residents are forced to walk in busy streets like Packard when sidewalks are unpassable. So this resolution incorporates that feedback. It works to improve upon our current operational model. It seeks to pilot some solutions by next winter, and it lays the groundwork for us to consider that bigger question of municipal snow removal when we have more data.
Further discussion of the main motion? Councilmember Griswold.
I want to thank Councilmember Briggs for bringing forward this new and improved resolution from the original one. I also want to acknowledge that Councilmember Rumlawi has some concerns about this and whether the DDA is part of this resolution or remains a separate resolution. I'm flexible and would accept either decision. I did submit an amendment to Jackie earlier today. And Jackie, would you mind sharing that with council? And I can read the amendment. It would be the second resolve clause. Resolved, City Council directs the city administrator following the feasibility study in the first resolve clause to conduct a survey to determine the level of community support for municipal sidewalk snow removal and preferences for a funding source such as a millage or a user fee. I believe that this amendment.
I'm sorry, is there a second? Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Dish. Councilmember Griswold, you have the floor. My apologies.
Oh, okay. I believe that this amendment is important so that we are able to manage expectations. People are reading this resolution and coming up with different conclusions. It was mentioned earlier today that Kayla Coleman gave an excellent presentation about equitable community engagement at the last Transportation Commission. And so I see a survey being an opportunity to apply some of the methodology that Kayla Coleman described and to look at opportunities maybe at a more granular level, as well as focusing on equity to determine where we might want to expand our sidewalk shoveling, and realizing that we're in a pandemic, we're facing a budget deficit, and the most important issue right now is to improve pedestrian safety at the least amount of money. And I see that being the snow and ice ridges at the crosswalk ramps. So, and I also want to thank Tom Crawford and Craig Hupy, as well as other staff members, for actually going out and looking at the environment when we did have a snowfall to determine where our challenges were in terms of crosswalks that were not passable. I also have a question for Molly.
Thank you.
Okay, may I ask a question? Or do you want me to wait till my second turn?
If you please.
Okay.
Has that amendment been distributed? Has it been shared with council?
Yes. We've got Councilmember Ramlawi and Radina on the amendment.
Well, I haven't seen the amendment, so I'll pass for now.
Councilmember Radina.
Yeah, I have a question for Councilmember Griswold potentially. I'm reading the amendment and see that it reads to determine the survey to determine the level of community support for municipal sidewalk snow removal. And I guess my question is whether or not your intention is for this to be a survey to gauge public preference for comprehensive municipal snow removal or different types of, I mean, because obviously we've learned over the course of a couple of weeks here that there are lots of different versions of municipal snow removal. And so I guess I just want some clarity on your intent for this survey.
Yes, I was referring to comprehensive, and I would be willing to accept that as a friendly amendment to add that word.
I would offer that amendment
Okay,
to
thank you.
include comprehensive before municipal sidewalk snow removal.
I guess before I ask whether that's friendly about it, I'll observe that the first resolve clause doesn't have the word comprehensive in it, and that I think that there's probably a virtue in consistency. That is to say, that whatever is the result of the First Amendment, the first resolve clause's assessment, feasibility, and proposal, that be the subject matter of any survey, and that it's the amendment is probably best left without comprehensive because we don't know the nature of what the ultimate proposal is going to be in the first resolve clause. Does that ring right with people? Does anyone have any objection if we remove this reference to, or if we, I guess, Councilmember Radina, I'm going to deem that your proposed amendment to the amendment has not been seconded and ask whether you wish to withdraw it or whether we're going to talk about it.
I'll withdraw it for now. Thanks.
All right, does anyone have any objection to that sleight of hand? Being none, we have the amendment as originally distributed by Councilmember Griswold, Councilmember Briggs.
And I completely support the idea of getting some sort of community feedback before we move forward with any sort of recommendations. So I'm not opposed to the idea of community feedback. The only thing that I guess raised just a question about right now before including that in formally with this resolution is that we're kind of tying ourselves. Sorry, if you're hearing that. Are you hearing an echo as well? Sorry, I'll try to see if that works. Sorry about the echo. So I'm just a little worried about tying ourselves to a particular community engagement strategy as came out of the equitable community engagement work that Ms. Coleman has done. We're not sure exactly where we're getting more equitable community engagement right now. Is it from the one-on-one? Is it from the surveys? Just allowing our community to get a little bit more, as we do more work on that, we may find that a different strategy or a joint strategy might be a better way to get some information. So I agree we should do that. I just wonder about formalizing that in this resolution right now, because that'll be a next step.
Would there be any objection to having a friendly amendment to the amendment to rather than to conduct a survey, to conduct community engagement process to determine?
Yes, that's much better.
Community engagement process, is that friendly to the body? I'm going to deem that to be moved by Councilmember Briggs and seconded by Councilmember Griswold, just as a matter of protocol. That's friendly to the body. So the amendment to the amendment now reads, resolved, City Council directs the city administrator following the feasibility study in the first resolve clause to conduct whatever I just said, something about community engagement, to determine the level of community support for municipal sidewalk, snow removal, and so forth. Thank you. Further discussion of the amendment. Well, let me just ask, is this amendment friendly? Not friendly. Councilmember Amlawi.
You know, this came to us very late, so we have not been able to ask questions to staff. I'll go back to that later. My concern is as we start going down this path is financial costs and really opportunity costs for staff. We are looking at trying to manage some really huge programs, our carbon neutrality goals, our affordable housing, our COVID recovery, economic segregation. We have a lot of challenges right now. This one doesn't rise to the top. And before we start spending time and money on this, I want to know how much money and time we're going to spend on this goose chase. Because quite frankly, I'm not hearing very many of my constituents asking for the type of what this resolution is calling for. And so before we start spending money and time, I want to know how much of it we're going to be spending on this. And then, sorry, we got this at 5 o'clock or on Friday and told to say, you know, come up, deal with it. And I'm like, you know what? I work on the weekends and I'm trying to get ready for everything else that we're preparing to discuss that's been on the agenda in time. And so this whole process has been strange, to say the least. And again, back to the question of, I want to know how much before we spend $1, what are we spending it on and what are we getting before we start spending and start throwing good money after bad.
On the amendment, Councilmember Griswold.
No, that's actually a question for the city administrator or somebody to explain to me how much this is going to cost. I mean, when we do outreach, when we send postcards, it costs money.
Yeah, I mean, the amendment that is made, we do not have an assessment of that cost at this time. The process that we're actually going to go through, we still need to talk about if this passes. So this would be staff work over some coming months in which we would understand that cost before anything would be done.
So would we see something before action was taken? I mean, what costs are associated with just passing this resolution if it was to pass?
I would anticipate staff developing some kind of plan or proposal, and then having an idea that would be able to be floated with the survey is what I would presume. I would take input from council if they're interested in a different direction than that, but it strikes me that some kind of engagement would occur after staff has done the work to develop, either one or a couple of alternatives for consideration.
Are we still speaking to the amendment?
We're on the amendment. Councilmember Griswold, did I miss, did you come up off the queue and then come back on the queue?
I'm going to pass on the amendment. I want to speak to the whole.
All right. Is there anybody else that wants to speak on the amendment? Regina.
This is more of a request of Councilmember Romlawi. I think you may be the source of our echo. You keep lighting up when the echo comes through. And so I don't know if council members could mute when we're not.
Further discussion of the amendment? Roll call vote, please, starting with Councilmember Hayner.
Councilmember Hayner,
Yes.
Councilmember Dish,
Yes.
Councilmember Griswold,
Yes.
Councilmember Song,
Yes.
Councilmember Grand,
Yes.
Councilmember Redina,
Yes.
Mayor Taylor,
Yes.
Councilmember Iyer,
Yes.
Councilmember Nelson. Yes. Councilmember Briggs,
Yes.
Councilmember Romlawi,
Yes.
motion carries.
Further discussion of the main motion is amended. Councilmember Griswold. Councilmember, you're muted.
I see this resolution as working towards our sustainability goals, our Vision Zero goals, as well as providing more accessibility for persons with mobility challenges. So I really see this as an integral part of many of our ongoing objectives.
Councilmember Hayner.
Well, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just some general remarks on this. So the 10th whereas clause, I mean, if I end up supporting this, I just want to point out a few things that the 10th whereas clause says the Transportation Commission endorsed the goal of municipal sidewalk snow removal and views this goal as an urgent need for city spending and planning. And I disagree with that. I recognize that that's how they felt and that's why it's in this whereas clause, but I completely disagree that in light of everything else we have going on, that this is an urgent need. So I just want to throw that out there. Secondly, the penultimate resolve clause, number 2, immediate remedies that can be implemented by the winter, such as changes to city ordinances, enforcement strategies. So that sounds like an opportunity to put it back on the homeowner like it already is. And so I'm not sure how that's going to jive with what we're speaking about here with his the municipality taking advantage of this, taking the ownership of this. And so I'm interested to see what happens there. And just generally, I'd just like to say that, the budget process is an opportunity to somewhat prioritize our needs, our city spending and planning, along with CIP and other major assessments of our goals and our direction. And I just, I think I may consider that, and I've heard this from constituents, that folks outside looking in, this really sounds a lot like what is sometimes characterized a first world problem here. Now, I know that they are definitely part of our transportation network, just as our streets are, and just as our city paths through the parks are, and so on. And I certainly think that parks should be doing that. And I appreciate the notion that this addresses corridors. I think that's great. But when we talked about this some years back, Mr. Hupy, I think the number that was applied to this was pretty astronomical. And I guess my general question for anyone, including our city administrator, would be, what could we possibly anticipate cutting to pay for this? So that's all. Thank you.
Councilmember Grant.
Thank you. When Councilmember Briggs first offered up co-sponsorship, I thought other people who do work that's more related to this were going to jump on it, and they didn't. So I just want to publicly thank her and ask to be added as a co-sponsor. I think this is just an outstanding process. I like that it doesn't tell us where we think we're going necessarily. It really does leave all sorts of possibilities open, and it allows it to be an iterative process where we can actually just try potentially some less expensive pilots. Next year, focus on the areas that we know are the biggest problems for mobility and access, and then go from there. So I think if this was saying next year, we're going to have a municipal program that pays for all of sidewalk removal, that I wouldn't necessarily be ready to support that. But I do think that that this, it involved all the right people. It aligns with, as Councilmember Griswold said, aligns with a lot of our goals. So I just really appreciate the process that she took, and look forward to some of this information that's going to come back. And I think even I've learned so much just from members of the community, looking at different models that other cities use that are not $2 million a year models. So I think there may be a way to get us there, or to get us to really improve our transportation network without that price tag. So thank you.
Councilmember Iyer.
Thank you. I think this is a really strong resolution. I think it reflects the values that we hold as a community. As I said to Mr. Crawford back in January, if I were designing a city from scratch today, I would never leave sidewalk maintenance to individual homeowners. I think, ensuring that we have a complete, well-functioning sidewalk system is it's an integral part of a city. It's an equity issue, both in terms of economics and physical ability. It's a climate action issue, and it's a health issue. So I think the process of creating this resolution, while not perfect, was pretty solid, starting with an initial idea, then gathering the input from community stakeholders, and finally evolving into what we have before us tonight. So I really appreciate the work of Council Members Briggs and Griswold on this, both of whom have long been advocates in this space in their own way. And I'm going to be proud to cast a vote in favor of it tonight.
Councilmember Rumloy.
Thank you. I have questions. The second whereas clause says 27% of Ann Arbor residents walk or use transit to get to work. There was no citation to where that is being drawn from. Can the sponsors of this resolution point me to where that fact is coming from? And as I look at this, I do have a lot of questions. I know that people have spoken very positively towards this resolution. I think it sets up a lot of false hope, and I don't think we're going to be able to deliver on most of this. And I know I brought a resolution that's now stuck in the Transportation Commission to deal with something that I felt was more manageable and more practical than what this calls for. And I really have a problem with the process. This, again, was added after we submitted our questions. It was not reviewed by the Transportation Commission. I listened to the Transportation Commission's meeting, and this resolution itself was not reviewed by them. I was told that the resolution that I brought 2 weeks ago needed to be reviewed by the Transportation Commission and get their input before it comes to this body. So with the lack of advance notice to get questions submitted, I move to have this postponed until the March 15th meeting so I can get some better answers to the questions that I have regarding this resolution.
There a second? Seconded by Councilmember Nelson. Discussion of the postponement. All right, Councilmember Briggs on the queue.
Yeah, thank you. Just around the discussion of process, it's actually why I focused.
Councilmember Alali, can you please mute your?
Sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you. So that was kind of why I formed my comments the way I did, because I knew that was one of your concerns, was to try to address how this process worked. The Transportation Commission provided feedback on a resolution that had some of these components in it, and then they provided very clear feedback on what they wanted to see for moving forward, which was what is included in that whereas clause around the Transportation Commission. I made amendments. The third resolve clause is basically what they had seen, and some of the other pieces are based entirely on their feedback to me on that, as are many of the whereas clauses, which were really focused on their work around the Pedestrian Safety Access Task Force. And they explicitly said that they were comfortable with me working on developing this resolution and bringing it to council. So I worked with the Transportation Commission chair and incorporated the feedback of Transportation Commission and brought this here tonight at the behest of the original sponsors, which we're hoping to get it back during the winter season, where this is a little bit more relevant. I do apologize that it came on Friday. I do believe that our council rules allow for an opportunity to ask questions of staff when these items come a little bit later. So to your question around the second whereas clause, that information comes directly from the work around our transportation plan update. I was making sure that I was taking a look at that and getting the data from that, as did some of the other elements, trying to align where our, what are the values that are imbued within our transportation plan, although it has not been adopted yet. It's been very clear from the community engagement work that's been done over the last 2 years, what our residents are really looking for in our transportation system.
The postponement, Councilmember Griswold.
I would support a postponement if time could be used to address Councilmember Rumlawi's concerns, and also determine if we need to have a freestanding resolution for snow removal in the DDA area, or if we could roll that into this resolution. The DDA is mentioned in a couple of places, and if we need to be more specific, I would be willing to do that as well. And that way it would be even more comprehensive. Oh, I do have one. May I ask a question of Molly? Snow removal on sidewalks is required after 1 inch of snow. On city streets, is it 3 or 4 inches?
Yeah,
you're on mute.
I got it. So you're asking if there's a requirement in code for snow removal on streets?
Yes.
There is not. We have a long-standing practice of plowing anytime that we think there's enough snow to plow local streets. But when we have a snow event of 4 inches or more, we move into the local streets faster than we ordinarily would.
Oh, okay, but it would be safe to say that you don't plow when there's just 1 inch of snow on a regular basis.
No, that is not safe to say.
Right.
Oh, okay.
It might just take us a while. So in a small event, again, anything under 4 inches, it just depends on the type of snow, what we think is warranted. We'll address major roads first, and when we're finished with those major roads, we'll move into local routes.
Also, there is a difference in sidewalks. Ordinance requires cleaning to bare pavement.
Yeah.
We do not treat streets to bare pavement. We treat streets for traction. So we have different end goals.
Right. But Councilmember Griswold, you are correct that not every 1 inch event, we plow local streets. It just really depends on the event.
Yeah. Okay,
and
thanks.
the type of snow. Yeah.
Councilmember Keener.
I'm going to chime in and say that I'll support this postponement because I believe that questions that we could ask in the form of, I assume, administrator or council questions, knowing this would be back on the agenda on the 15th, may illuminate some of our concerns and considerations and may even help outline possible solutions. That's a prime reason for me to support this postponement, since nothing's going to be acted upon this snow season, you might say. A secondary reason is my disconnect over how it is that we refer things to Transportation Commission. They don't discuss them, and then something wholly different comes back to us. And so I share my colleagues' concerns about process on this matter. And so as a secondary reason, that's also why I will support a 1 session postponement. Thank you.
Councilmember Ramlawi.
Thank you. I got to say that I support a lot of what's in this resolution, but I am unprepared to vote tonight based on the facts that I just heard repeated and I've explained a couple times. I've not been able to be a part of this process. I got this resolution on Friday. I would like to be a part of it, and I would like to support it. But once I'm comfortable in voting for it, I feel that I'm not prepared, and that we should be given time to submit questions and time to think about this. I fear that it's so broad and complex that my specific interest, and that's the DDA areas, which I think make the most sense for many different reasons, will be lost in all this. And I'd rather see the DDA be teased out from the main part of this so that we can focus on it on a dual track. We can look at things outside the DDA and then things inside the DDA. And I just want to make sure that that's in there in a way that that focus isn't lost.
Councilmember Ryer.
Thank you. I will not be supporting postponement. We've talked about this issue at 2 council meetings now. We all had the ability to watch the Transportation Commission discussion, which was a good discussion about this and informed Councilmember Briggs's final resolution that she brought back. We all knew she was working on it, and we all knew she was going to bring something back tonight. And so there's been ample opportunity to ask her questions, to give her feedback. And in addition to that, we now have a new council rule that allows for questions on late breaking items, so that council members could have submitted questions this morning, up until I forget what time it is, 9:30 this morning, and had them answered by staff. So I think there's been ample opportunity for everyone to do their homework, and I'm ready to vote.
Councilmember Briggs.
I just wanted to stress maybe a third time that Transportation Commission received a resolution that had many of the same elements, provided feedback. I took that feedback and the recommendations that I received from Transportation Commission, altered the resolution. So that's what is in front of you tonight. So it's not fair to suggest that the Transportation Commission has not provided feedback on this. And this is what they have suggested we bring back. To Councilmember Ramlawi's concern, I explicitly brought up in Transportation Commission a request. your resolution. Unfortunately, it couldn't be formally considered because of the time frame. I just actually didn't realize that at our previous council meeting that we couldn't have that discussion, and it was a pretty packed agenda. Otherwise, I think maybe they might have tried to provide more feedback at that time. There was, a limited discussion around it, but I've really, from the feedback that I'm sensing we're getting from Transportation Commission, it's sort of this overarching feedback that we've received around where they want to see us headed policy-wise. I've tried to really explicitly incorporate your interest in the DDA, and one that I completely share. I think you're 100% right that we have an opportunity to make, with additional focus, some significant improvements in our DDA, and that's why our third resolve clause explicitly asks for, in the report that will be delivered to council by September 6th, strategies for addressing the problem by zone area of the city, including the DDA, residential neighborhoods, commercial and transit corridors. And so I'm explicitly asking, we're explicitly asking, if we pass this, for a report that suggests, what could happen within the DDA. What are those strategies are likely different than what would happen along our transit corridors. And I think we need that information and what you're asking for. And I think this resolution addresses a lot of what you're asking for. So
on the postponement, Councilmember Dish, then perhaps we vote. Councilmember Dish, you're on mute.
I lowered my hand, but I didn't unmute myself. I am not supporting postponement either, because when I read this resolution, not only do I see that stakeholders were engaged, but I also see that the discussions that we've had on council and Councilmember Rumlawi's resolution from 2 weeks ago have been incorporated into this resolution. So yes, the third resolved clause asks for strategies, says that strategies should include strategies for addressing problems by zone area of the city. And the fourth resolved clause says that City Council directs the city administrator to pilot solutions in the DDA, preferably along one or more major transit corridors. So what I see is an attempt to very directly incorporate the discussions we've been having. I can't think of something that we've talked more about than snow. We've been talking about snow and hearing about snow from residents for the last 6 weeks. It's been constant. So I think that it is wonderful that we have an opportunity to move forward with actions that will see fruit during the winter of 2021 to 2022.
Further discussion of the postponement. Roll call vote, please start with Councilmember Hayner.
Councilmember Hayner?
Yes.
Councilmember Dish?
Yes.
Councilmember Griswold?
Yes.
Councilmember Song?
Yes.
This is on
Councilmember Grant?
This is on the postponement. Do we need to reset?
We're voting.
No,
I think there was some confusion.
Wait, is this on the main?
This
No,
is on the
I
postponement.
was confused.
It was announced on the postponement.
I'm sorry.
And you've clearly,
You're voting on the
I'm going
postponement.
to request that we reset.
Please, thank you. I'm sorry.
That's all right, on the postponement.
I'm going to call a point of order.
I actually don't understand. I don't know this rule. My understanding is that when in the midst of a vote, if people vote in error and they've caught themselves, that we honor that error. Mr. Postma, is that improper?
Hold on, I was out about to turn out on the light.
That's quite all right. So what people have voted in error. That is to say, in the midst of a vote, people, some council members voted in the affirmative, believing they were voting on the main motion, whereas they had spoken that they were wished to vote against the postponement. The question is it improper to rerun the vote in the midst of the vote when council members have indicated they have voted in error.
If you really want me to take time, I would suggest take a break and we can look at it. My usual advice, if you're looking at to Robert's rules at this point, is that if it is not what they intended to vote, you should really look at it. But I can't answer that off the cuff. So if you want to take a little break on that, I can. But certainly, if the body if the body wants the vote to be to start over, you could do it. But I would just need to look at this further, and I would touch base with Mr. Frost also. So, but I can't do it off the cuff, just sitting here.
Are we having an objection to revoting?
My objection is to the interruption of the clerk's call of the vote. The clerk's roll call should not be interrupted if just because someone thinks that perhaps that, and it wasn't even a person raising their hand and say, "Oh, I didn't mean to vote that way." It was someone else interrupting the clerk who hadn't been called on.
I didn't raise my hand. I was shaking my head. I'm sorry. I'm exhausted. My mother is ill. I'm sorry.
Vote again if it's going to go the way you wish.
A roll call vote, please, on the postponement.
Councilmember Hayner,
Yes.
Councilmember Dish,
No.
Councilmember Griswold,
Yes.
Councilmember Song,
No.
Councilmember Grand,
No.
Councilmember Redina,
No.
Mayor Taylor,
No.
Councilmember Iyer,
No.
Councilmember Nelson,
No.
Councilmember Briggs,
No.
Councilmember Romali,
Yes.
motion fails.
For the discussion of the main motion as amended. Councilmember Hayner, I have lost track of how many times you've spoken in the main motion. Can you advise me?
No, as facilitator of the meeting, that one's on you. I do not recall.
I'm going to put this at your second speaker unless you have some second speaking on the main motion. Do you object to that?
No.
Thank you. You have.
There are so much, I'm not going to support this, even though I support the notion behind it. I'm sure it will pass because clearly the vote is, being nudged a certain way or other, procedurally, and that's fine. But there's a lot of things wrong with the claims that are made in these whereas statements, and they're not really backed up. And so I think that's going to be found because of the amendment that Councilwoman Griswold set forward earlier, that some of these some of the claims that are made here just don't jibe with even our non-motorized transportation plan. And so I'm just not going to support this out of general principle. I just don't like the way this is going. I get a sense that, and like I said before, we have so many issues here in the city, so many issues. We have people calling up and begging for, better spending on mental health, but no, we're going to shovel sidewalks instead in the neighborhoods. Okay. I can't support this. I would have prior to that little notion around the vote, but that was an offensive display of disorder.
Councilmember Song.
So I'll apologize for the confusion as well. I thought we were voting on the main motion. So, primarily because it looks like Councilmember Briggs has done the work, working with Transportation Commission, having these conversations with the DDA and pulling all these considerations together in her resolution. I don't understand what's stopping Councilmember Romali from working closely with Transportation Commission as well, or working more closely with Councilmember Briggs. This
Point of order.
Oh, okay. I guess that's all.
Councilmember Grant.
Thanks. Just one point I forgot to bring up earlier, and I just want to really recognize that Councilmember Redina and I have had some I think important conversations, because there is this ordinance piece in here as well about about the way that the current policy we have is enforced. And we've heard from some really wonderful neighbors, frankly, who've still been ticketed, even when they're out trying to, you know, help the single mom with 4 kids shovel their snow, and one neighbor doesn't like the job that they did. So it you know, we learn as we go sometimes, and we try things, and I think this also gives us the opportunity to address some of those concerns that we've heard this winter, and continue to hear about how we actually enforce this, because I do think it can put an undue burden on some residents, and I just want to recognize that, you know, we're all, you know, everyone in this community has been dealing with a lot. We're coming up on a year of this, right? And let's try to give one another a little bit of support.
Representative Brumley.
Thank you. I'll push back on all this effort that's being made to say that there's like inclusivity and the process was as what it should have been. My resolution stuck in transportation for a month. This resolution comes up without any review by the Transportation Commission. They did not formally review this resolution. And so, you know, it's great that we have until 9:30 on Monday to submit questions, but I work 30 hours on the weekends running a restaurant because I still have to work. And I don't have time to do this other stuff on new council business that's not urgent. This is not an urgent matter. And there's no consideration to given to members of council like myself who work on the weekends. They say, these are the new rules, deal with it. And we're supposed to come prepared, we're supposed to be cordial. This isn't any of that right now. And anyone who's witnessing this knows that. And so back to my question, I won't be supporting this. You know, I won't. Go ahead, it'll pass, you know, I'm sure it will. But I got problems with the way this is being done, how the sausage is being made. And this body, this is all, you know, for public display. The second whereas clause says 27% of Ann Arbor residents walk or use transit to get to work. And I'm asking where this information comes from. I'm looking at the 2009 Transportation Plan Update, page 78, 4-20. And it states that non-motorized facilities in Ann Arbor are vital to the transportation network as witnessed by 18% of commuters. Where does 27% come from? That's a 50% inflation on this 2009 Transportation Plan Update. There are just so many things in this that we have not been asked to answer questions. When I say ask questions, I'm not going to ask, the questions that I have are for staff, is for Tom Crawford and his staff, not for the sponsoring council member. That's the opportunity and the privilege that I think council members deserve, and that the council minority is being shut out of. People are not playing fair. And this simple snow resolution is quite obvious of the games and the tactics that are being deployed.
Councilor Griswold.
I just want to remind my colleagues and the viewing audience that this resolution does not have any dollars associated with it, nor does it call for comprehensive municipal snow shoveling. What we're doing right now is we're collecting data, doing a feasibility study so that we can make data-driven decisions which are compatible with Vision Zero. Thank you.
So on, I imagine that figures for non-car use vary depending on your methodology, but on page 24 of the Snow Buddy report that we received, they take data from the US 2000 census commute to work data, and it credits Ann Arbor in 2000. So based on our year 2000 population, with 2.4% people getting around by bike, 16.5 pedestrian, and 6.9% public transit. So for the year 2000, it was 25.8% non-car. That's pretty consistent with a number of 27% of Ann Arbor residents walk or use transit to get to work, based on more recent data, and also Councilmember Briggs already said where she got that figure, but this figure in the Snow Buddy report corroborates her figure.
Councilmember Briggs.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't, if Councilmember Rimlawi had contacted me before, I'm sure I could have gone, and it was not. I'm pretty sure I got this through the mobility fact book, and it was an addition of our transit and pedestrian numbers, but I can go back and see that. If that is the primary concern, is a whereas clause around this, I would consider it a friendly amendment to remove that fact if that somehow seems entirely offensive. However, I'm happy to provide that information to you at a later.
We'll discuss the main motion. For my part, I'm delighted that this is moving forward. I think this is the culmination of a great deal of work that's been performed by this council, by members of the Transportation Commission and other interested residents. You know, we have for a number of years now taken steps to recognize that our transportation network is comprised of, is multimodal, that it involves vehicles, of course, but that it also involves, infrastructure for pedestrians, infrastructure for cyclists. And this is an important step towards putting that value set into practice. It won't be an easy solution, certainly. There will be some cost associated with it, and it will be important that we identify that cost and provide for it in an equitable and prudent manner. But nevertheless, this is an important step, and I'm glad we're taking it. And I want to thank the initial movers behind it, and both in this body and elsewhere. For the discussion, roll call vote, please, starting with Councilmember Hayner.
Councilmember Hayner?
No.
Councilmember Dish?
Yes.
Councilmember Griswold?
Yes.
Councilmember Song?
Yes.
Councilmember Grand?
Yes.
Councilmember Redina?
Yes.
Mayor Taylor?
Yes.
Councilmember Iyer?
Yes.
Councilmember Nelson? Yes. Councilmember Briggs?
Yes.
Councilmember Romali?
No.
Motion carries.
We have a closed session today, Mr. Postma.
No, Mayor.
We have before us the clerk's report of communications, petition, and referrals. May I motion please to approve the clerk's report? Moved by Councilmember Adina, seconded by Councilmember Grand. Discussion, please, of the clerk's report. All in favor? Opposed? The clerk's report is approved. We have communications today from our city attorney.
No, Mayor.
We now come to public comment general time. Public comment general time is an opportunity for members of the public to speak to council and the community about matters of municipal interest. To speak at public comment general time, one need not have signed up in advance. To speak at public comment general time, please enter the number on your screen, 877-853-5247. 877-853-5247. Once you've been connected, please enter meeting ID 942-1273-2148. That is 942-1273-2148. Once you have entered that number, please enter *9 to indicate that you wish to speak. When it is your turn to speak, our clerk will identify you with the last 3 digits of your telephone number. When it is your turn to speak, you will have 3 minutes in which to speak. Our clerk will notify you when 30 seconds are remaining and when your time has expired. When your time has expired, please conclude your remarks and cede the floor. Is there anyone who'd like to speak at public comment?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, yes, Corey Holland. I just want to speak because it's gonna be my last time appearing. Because like I said, I'm not an activist or anything like that. And I want to speak on something I didn't get to speak on it earlier. Was a lot of these attacks around the country, Asian Americans. Some of these attacks have been involving African Americans. So I just want to speak out also against that and make sure that anybody who's listening to this, especially in the African American community, where we deal with discrimination on a daily basis, that if anybody is attacking anybody else as a person of color for a discriminatory reason, I just think they need to have some kind of soul checking. So I just wanted to make sure I said that on behalf of anybody who hasn't spoke out on it. Also, I want to make sure I address this body, let them know the reason why I even came on here is because, like I said, I'm in the early planning stages of protests, trying to build that together with looking out for other partners. I just wanted individuals to know when we come there that this is not about anti-LGBTQ sentiment, even though the people who attack me are part of the LGBT community. And I want to make sure I invite any members of the LGBTQ individuals, organizations, or anybody else who stand for justice to join in when the protest happens, or anybody else who deals with discrimination. Also, I want to make sure people understand that if you don't speak for justice, if you don't speak up for injustice when it's somebody else, then they're not going to care when it's you. So it might be easy when you're sitting back and everything is fine, and you're not dealing with these injustices. Eventually, it's going to be you. So I just want to make sure anybody out there who doesn't have to deal with the day-to-day things that most of these people are bringing up in this public discussions, that be thankful that you don't have to deal with those type of issues. But you should never be quiet when the people are facing injustice. And the last thing I want to say is to anybody out there who is trying to figure out how to deal with life after you become disabled, I would like for them to come out and with the protests as well, because I think a lot of times people don't pay a lot of attention to disabled. Once you become disabled and you haven't been there before, you face a lot of difficulties you didn't realize was there before. So I just want to make sure anybody who I think who's dealing with difficulties like disabilities also come out and take interest in the protest. And for that right there, that's my time. Just want to thank you for taking the time to listen. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Caller with the phone number ending in 205.
Hi, this is Joe Spalding. I'm calling from Holland, Michigan. I wanted to say thanks to Councilmember Nelson. We need to ban the box immediately. I wanted to say that the biggest indicator that a veteran is or will be homeless is whether or not they have been convicted of felony. Councilmember Regina, thank you for mentioning the connection directly to homelessness there. In my work with voters' rights, I remember learning about horrible stories, Michigan prison guards telling inmates that they can't vote when they're being released. And that's just absolutely not true. And I'm sure there's a whole bunch that needs to get cleaned up in housing when it comes to banning the box, but it's good to see Ann Arbor leading the way. As a side note there, that there's going to be stories about that posted online, on Facebook, on Twitter, by MLive, by the rest of the media, television news outlets, and it's very important that the comment section reflects how important that decision is for people that are experiencing that. I do want to talk about the resolution to waive client privilege here. First, it was flirting with scaring every attorney the city could have into giving less than articulate legal advice, which could always cost the city taxpayer cash. The rules discourage council members from embarrassing the city on Facebook. I want to know what specific viewpoints Councilmember Remwali is concerned about being chilled here in that context. Councilmember Hayner, you can't have it both ways. You frequently moan and groan about how your voice is the same as the voices of thousands of residents in your district. If that is true, you can't say that Dr. Lisa Dish, who is one of the smartest people in Ann Arbor, has no agency and gets her policy positions from Sabra, which is something you've said on Facebook, without kicking sand in the faces of the very same people you're talking about. Viewpoint discrimination, if you're saying things that test the line between free speech and actionable defamation so badly, and the best thing that can be said about your words is that saying them isn't technically illegal, you're probably embarrassing yourself and those you represent. Finally, I want to say that it's probably not the best use of the ACLU's time to be reviewing the complaints about folks worrying about whatever the viewpoints are getting suppressed here, which aren't being articulated on Facebook. They probably have a lot more important things to do, given the events of the past year, especially in helping clean up the mess that Trump left behind. So
30
I hope
seconds.
the council members think about that when they're asking them to use their precious time. That's all I've got to say. Thanks for listening to me once again.
Thank you.
Caller with the phone number ending in 556, do you have a comment?
Hello, can you hear me? Ralph McKee,
Yes, we can.
1116 Red Oak. I have some process issues that I've discussed process here several times, but I think tonight illustrates some problems. It's troubling that these items hit the agenda very late. That not only limits analysis of council members or stakeholders, but what about the general public? Let's assume that this RAA contract, it's $7 million. Let's assume there were some issues in that contract. Would you really expect the general public to go through a contract like that over the weekend, contact their council member representative to discuss those issues that they found? That's frankly, it's crazy. And so if the matter isn't urgent, it shouldn't be put on late, period, ever, if you care about the public at all. And that applies to the snow removal. I understand that's not the same kind of motion, and a lot of people have been talking about it, but not that particular issue. I did hear about it. I was able to discuss it with Councilmember Briggs on Sunday. But what about the general public who just isn't watching the agenda, turning it in on Friday evening? You need to think about them a little bit. A similar process issue. I got a postcard on Saturday reminding me of current resident snow removal policy. Why the heck was that going out at the end of the winter? How much did that cost? Whose idea was that? On February 27th? Similarly, a postcard notice just went out to all the landlords raising the possibility of grandfathering all residential non-PR STRs. I think that's appropriate, but compare that to the Planning Commission is considering tomorrow amendments Ray ADUs, which would allow non-owner occupied ADU within 3 feet of the lot line on every lot in the city. Despite urging by several residents, staff has steadfastly refused to send notice to the affected property owners. These 3 examples show an astonishing lack of consistency by the staff decision-making on these items. And I'm really, it's kind of mind-boggling, really. A snow removal notice on February 27th, and you refuse to send out notice of a major item. You just flat refuse.
30 seconds.
And anyway, the process is important, and there is a lot of inconsistency coming from city bodies right now on process. Thank you.
Thank you.
Caller with the phone number ending in 145, do you have a comment?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hello, my name is Arya Shuga. I am with Kindness Tech Program. I am working with the homeless community. I wasn't able to say this earlier because I couldn't get a slot, but I definitely believe that we need to find alternates to armed responders to mental health, especially in the homeless community. As I'm doing what I do, I see a lot of police who just are kind of like driving around warming centers and driving around shelters, and it kind of looks like they're looking for a problem to solve, and it needs to stop. It's unacceptable. You know, there's not as many crimes as people probably like to think there are, and these small issues that are escalated by armed responders like the police do nothing but pack the system with people who don't deserve to be there. Another thing I want to say is, Jeff Hayner, what you said to Lisa Dish was unacceptable, period. She apologized. She made a small mistake, and the way you responded to that was aggressive and unnecessary. You speak of decorum and civility, but you offer neither. If you want civility and decorum, you earn it. If not, cut the bullshit, because you need to go. And me and Michelle Hughes, we're going to make sure that happens in 2022. Count your days. Ram Lowy, if you can't do your job, resign, period. You know, if I come to work without my name tag, they'll send me home. So you coming unprepared to meetings where you're making policy decisions is unacceptable. If you can't do your business and council member duties, resign, take care of your business, do what you got to do, but don't get in the way. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Caller with the phone number ending in 340, do you have a comment?
Yes, greetings, Mr. Mayor and City Council. This is Luis Vasquez from the First Ward. Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to express my appreciation for your applying your veto to the Connor O'Neill's street closure. You know, it's a sign of leadership, and I'm grateful to have a mayor and a council that can take a look back and make corrections to decisions that are made. As you know, I think this was a wise decision for a few reasons. The rates of infection, new infections of COVID-19 are still high all across the country, including in Michigan, where yesterday we had 1,000 new cases of COVID-19 identified, 50,000 across the US, which are the numbers that existed during the second surge back in June, July, and August of 2020. So, you know, as more people get vaccinated, as those rates of infection come down over the next few weeks, my hope is that it will be safe enough for all of us to be able to go outdoors and dine on Main Street again. And I'm looking forward to healthy streets activity. And if people are concerned still about the businesses in our town, do us all a favor, put your money where your mouth is, go out and buy some gift cards from Connor O'Neill's, from Jolly Pumpkin, from all the great establishments that we have on Main Street. Thank you for your time and have a good night.
Thank you.
Caller with the phone number ending in 684, do you have a comment?
Yes, hi, this is Eric Sturgis calling from Ann Arbor, Michigan. I've got 4 things. It's tough after some of the callers, but the first thing I would like to mention is that I believe Council Member Nelson and Ramali mentioned that the ACLU reached out to them. So I think we should call the ACLU and let them know that Joe Spalding thinks it's a waste of their time and that they shouldn't have reached out to Council Member Nelson or Ramali. Number 2, Councilmember Radina, when the letter was sent to the school system, I really appreciate your Facebook post of how you reached out to community leaders and spoke to different people. However, I was informed that you did not speak to Ernesto Guerrero, who is on the school board, who's in your ward, who's a person of color. So that was kind of concerning to me. I would also like to know for DC5, which I was supportive of openly, why it was put on the agenda so late. I think that's a fair question to be answered. And I think the fourth thing I would like to say, and I wasn't going to say this, but I want to thank the 4 council members who voted against the street closure for Connor and Meals in the first place, because they had the courage to do it in the first place and knew what was right in the first place. So thank you. And, I hope everyone's not too tired and we don't have to revote much more. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak at public comment?
Caller with the phone number ending in 736, do you have a comment?
Yes, hi. This is Trisha Duckworth coming to you again. I wanted to speak to you all briefly about, number one, I agree with the caller with Mr. Hayner's continued behavior. Sir, I don't know what's going on at the core of your soul. As a social worker, I see you as being a hurt person and hurting person. People hurt other people. You bully some of the people, your colleagues, and it's ridiculous how you just did Councilman Dish. That should stop. That should stop. You should learn common respect for your colleagues. Now, I would just like quickly to speak to this council about one thing. There's been racism and racist acts that are happening in the school district. They have happened for the last 30 years. You all decide to involve yourself in a school board issue. I get it. People reached out to you. You thought you were doing what is best. But people also reached out to you all as well about the racism that was going on in the district. And you chose not to do anything about that. None of you chose to lend your voices to that. So for me, that's the problem, where you listen to the voice of the privileged, but when the underprivileged, when those that are minorities come to you and say, please do something, stand up, speak out about this, we hear it's not our jurisdiction. Well, if it wasn't your jurisdiction to talk about racism, it should not have been your jurisdiction to talk about them going back to school. It's just ridiculous to see that the way that those privileged individuals even done Crystal and Dupree and Ernesto, it was ridiculous. And then you all defend them and send in support because that is what they wanted. So you continue to listen to the voice of the privileged. And we are saying that that is unacceptable. You should be able to listen to all of the citizens of Ann Arbor. You should be able to listen to those citizens that asked you to reach out about racism in that district. So if you did that for one issue, I am asking you to do it for the other. That is only right. And it should start from the top down with the mayor leading the way. And everybody on this board should sign to that, stating that racism in the school district should not be tolerated. I thank you all for listening in this small moment, but I hope not that you just listen, but you take action to battle racism in Ann Arbor and to help build racial equity, because it is necessary, and we will not take down, we will push every step of the way. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Bannister, do you have a comment? Ms. Bannister, you can unmute yourself. Do you have a comment? Ms. Bannister, do you have a comment? We don't hear you.
Is there anyone else who'd like to speak at public comment?
Mayor, I don't see anyone else with their hands up.
Being no one, public comment is closed. Are there communications from council? Councilmember Hayner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to speak to my call for a point of order earlier. I called a point of order because our rules were not being followed. Not only our, sorry, everybody gets to hear me echo. Not only our council rules, our parliamentarian rules. Council Rule 10, no member shall speak until recognized for that purpose by the presiding officer. Well, clearly that happened. And, you know, another rule under Council Rule 10, although I would like to have them numbered instead of bullet pointed, which I asked for in writing, was that the members speak to their own views and motives. And so it's okay to say, I presume that means it's okay to say, I was prepared for this meeting. I received this by Friday, but still had plenty of time. It's not okay to say, you should have, you should have, you should have. And so I take offense with that too, but I didn't call the point of order for that because I'm not going to be picky about this. But when it comes to voting and things, it's certainly fine to back up that vote. And I understand that people can be lost, but it was clearly announced that's what we were voting on. And I heard it, and I assume others did too. So that's why I call a point of order when rules aren't being followed, because it's every member of this body has a right to have the rules followed for their own ability to speak clearly and frankly and represent people. And, you know, I think one of our callers spoke accurately to the notion that it doesn't give us enough time when things happen on a Friday if they're not urgent. And so I'm also going to request that any responses that I get to my questions about the RAA contract, I'm going to move to file them with the clerk on our next meeting so that they become part of the questions of the body that the public can have access to. Thank you.
Councilmember Amlali.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I'll just piggyback on that a little bit. You know, I believe I come to these meetings prepared. I study our agendas, emails, attachments. I go to my meetings. I run a business. I can do it. To suggest that I can't do this job or I'm overwhelmed and I should resign because I come unprepared. I think folks at this table and in our community, by and large, know that's not true. And what I'm unprepared for is last minute additions, as a resident just spoke to it as well. It's not only for us, but it's for our community, because many of them come to us when they see something on a resolution that raises questions or concerns. And hopefully we can address this to the admin committee to eliminate last minute additions, and that they will require 6 votes of council to be put on after Wednesday, the preceding of the council meetings, or something close to that. We should be able to ask questions and get written responses to those, and not have to put it in at 9:30 Monday morning. Sorry, I'm in the industry. I work I work for a living, believe it or not, anywhere from 40 to 70 hours a week on top of council, and I can do it. I've shown to do it. But I'll move on, and I'll just say that I have been working with our city administrator about enforcement of snow. I know we talked about it earlier, about people being hit with heavy fines. I know one constituent that was hit with 2 fines in 1 week for $140 each. And so I'll be hopefully bringing in an amendment to change our ordinance to reduce that amount to something that I believe is more reasonable, because I think it's a little heavy-handed. And furthermore, just the postcards on the snow. I did think that was a waste of taxpayer dollars. Thank you.
Councilmember Grant.
Thank you. I'm sorry. Thank you. I want to respond to one of the callers about the schools, to Ms. Duckworth and her comments. And I'm only going to speak to my own motivation in that signing on to that letter. It was to try to address a couple things. One, that there was a specific vote that was coming up, and two, that I also felt that our actions were really trying to help address the vaccine supply issue, particularly for our teachers in our community. As a member of the City Schools Committee, it is my, not just hope, but commitment that I hope that we can, and I plan to have these kinds of the conversations about race with our colleagues on the school board. There wasn't a specific action that we were, going to write to, but if there is in the future, I can understand why we may choose to cross that line that we haven't chosen to cross before. I also just want to thank everyone who did help, get our teachers on the road to vaccination. It was really inspiring, and specifically call out Ann Arbor residents Beth Linsky and Gina Katz, who organized this terrific drive at the University of Michigan site to hand out free donuts to teachers who were getting vaccines, and was glad to be able to participate in that effort for a short time. But I think it was also important to support our teachers, and because they've been, just their efforts have been Herculean this year. Thanks.
Councilmember Nelson.
I have a comment that I debated just making privately to Councilmember Dish, but I think it's worth stating publicly. I have been thinking about what happened with the confusion around the voting, and I think it's worth remarking or sharing that the new council members that are sitting at our virtual table are experiencing a very different kind of beginning to their term than we experienced. And I want to acknowledge publicly that I remember probably interrupting the chair of our meeting 3 or 4 times to ask for clarification about what we were voting on. It was very unusual tonight to have the actual process of a vote interrupted. And I do understand the response to that, and feeling like that was very strange and bizarre. But now that we are at a virtual table, the opportunity to just pop in and interrupt the chair of our meeting rather than Ms. Boudry is all delayed by several moments, because you have to quickly unmute yourself. And I just want to express compassion for the fact that it's harder now. And so what happened tonight was legitimately remarkable, but I just want to acknowledge that I was able at the table in our live meetings to ask for clarification more than once about exactly what we were voting on. I just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Further communication from council. Councilmember Briggs.
I guess I would also like to second Councilmember Romalawi's request for the Administration Committee to just take a look at the timeline for submissions for items to the agenda. It was noted multiple times tonight that this addition was late. According to our rules, it was not late, it was on time. I also am sympathetic to the comments that we heard tonight around items coming to the agenda late. As a advocate, I remember that I spent many of my weekends frustrated by the items that came in on a Friday. So I'm happy to have our Rules Committee take a look at that and figure out if that timeline is appropriate.
Further communication? May I have a motion to adjourn, please? Moved by Councilmember Griswold, seconded by Councilmember Song. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? We're adjourned.